whole thing up yesterday.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, because I was like, studio's gone. I got to figure out what I'm gonna do. So
Right. Well, dude, I mean, it looks great. I mean, you fucking crushed it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, like all the comedians and everybody. Dude, you got Stephen Wright. That's a deep cut.
So they're kind of like some of my favorites.
Sure. Yeah.
Not all of them, but some of my like all-time favorite comedians.
Right.
Just for various different things that I found interesting from who they are and what they do.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was just that it was supposed to be like 26 originally. I just couldn't fit that many.
No,
so
I got
was
you.
like, all right, this is what I'll do.
Man, this guy, Eddie
Izzard.
Izzard. Yeah.
He's hilarious.
Almost called him Eddie Pepitone, but yeah, dude, Eddie Izzard is fucking dude genius. You know, and I like that he did the whole, you know, like kind of cross-dressing, kind of trans drag thing, right? Like way early on before anybody was doing it. And he didn't make a fucking fuss about it at all. It was like he just showed up and he's like, "Hey, what's up? I'm just like a girl now." You're like,
that was him.
Yeah.
Like he did this. I remember watching Dress to Kill, which is one of the more well-known specials that he did. I think it was HBO when HBO was still the place to go for specials.
right.
And I was like, this is really funny and has nothing to do with, you know, the way your appearance is.
Yeah.
It's just the jokes just kept hitting one after another.
Right.
And you're like, this is hilarious. So it was never part of the cultural zeitgeist at that time to think about a cross-dresser or it being important to the person.
Yeah.
I don't know, like it shifted so much recently that like Eddie is almost like old school. You know, like one of the OG LGBT kind of advocates or members or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And I've heard him speak before where he's like, this, like, I still like chicks, dude. I just like dressing like this.
Yeah.
He's like, I feel comfortable dressing as a woman.
Right.
And cool. But like, that's your thing. And he doesn't try to make a big deal about it. Like, he's had this amazing career as an actor, as a stand-up comedian, as I'm sure a bunch of other things that we don't know because he's not an American artist per se. He's Great Britain. Like, he's one of the best over there. So I don't know what else he's done, I'm sure. But, I mean, there's got to be a Rolodex of stuff.
I know he's like an activist, too, and he does stuff like that. I mean, he's just a very talented dude altogether. I love that about him.
I mean, I've always liked Eddie Izzard because I actually got to meet him randomly. Really? So I was working at the Apple store as, I hate the term,
genius.
Mac genius.
Yeah,
I hate that goddamn term because we weren't geniuses. You know, like we were Geek Squad with just better T-shirts.
Man, I'm gonna start texting you for all my Apple, all my Apple stuff.
You're welcome to. Yeah.
I'm like, Tom, I can't get into my email. And you're like, did you clear your browser? I'm like, nah, I fixed it. Thanks, buddy.
Perfect. I'm happy to. I help everybody else that has a question like that. But he came into the Apple store and he was wearing like a soccer jersey.
Yeah.
And he was just out playing soccer with his friends. And I guess the ball hit his laptop and just shattered the thing.
Cool.
So he walked in. He was like, "What do I do?" I was like, "Well, your options are we send it out and you don't have it for a while, and Apple will fix everything and send it back to you at like a one flat rate, or buy a new one and we'll just transfer all your data for you." He was like, "Cheers, mate. I'm gonna go buy a new one," and that was it. But like, he was such a lovely person to interact with.
Yeah.
You know, he was just like everybody else. And he didn't want to be treated any differently. He waited in line like everyone else, asked his question, went and bought a new laptop, and just went off on his day.
Dude, I love hearing stories like that about famous people. When I find out that they're not cunts, it just makes me just stoked, you know? And just none of that, like, do you know who I am? Like, things like that. It's just, when I hear anybody, do you know who I am? Or, like, do you know who my father is? I'm like, dude.
Ooh, that's the one that cuts me the deepest.
Yeah, dude.
When people are like, do you know who my uncle or my dad or this? And I'm like, who gives a fuck,
yeah,
bro? Who are you?
Like, yeah, is he God? I don't know. If your dad's God, you're Jesus, and I'm stoked to meet you. My grandma's gonna be happy you're here. But
it depends on the story you believe. But yeah, you're the son of whatever you believe is your God, or you're the prophet of whatever. But I get what you're saying is like, and I feel sorry. I hate saying this, but I do feel sorry for those people a little bit because they feel like living in the shadow of their parent, uncle, whoever was the important person is their identity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's...
Cheers, by the way.
Oh, cheers, buddy. Thank you so much for the bourbon.
Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Dude, thank you, man. Yeah, dude, it's, you know, there's a lot of people out there who are living in the shadows of the people who built, like, empires and stuff, and it's got to be sad, right? It's got to be sad that there is this great thing that your dad or your uncle or your family or whatever built, and then you're just there, and now you're just kind of riding on that, and it's like you don't have anything that you've built, or they don't have anything they've built or whatever, and it makes you feel bad for them.
You do, but then you also look at the flip side of that coin, where you have like a Robert Downey Jr.,
right?
Where he comes from an entertainment family, a very famous father.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, he had his, issues with drug addiction and alcoholism.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, when he got clean and stuff, like, he's one of the nicest, most humble people, genuinely knows how talented he is, but he doesn't live under the shadow of anybody else. He is Robert Downey Jr. Like,
right.
You know him for him.
Yeah.
And if you don't know him as Iron Man at least.
Right.
Because he kicked off an entire 20-year, multi-billion-dollar franchise.
I do love that. Like, I heard Marvel was, like, really fucking struggling before that. And then they came out with, like, the Iron Man. And Robert Downey Jr. really kind of, like, Iron Man was, like, one of the first big Marvel movies. And people were like, oh, I fucking like this dude. This isn't, like, a normal, like, comic book movie. Like, this is great. And it kind of kickstarted everything, and it was one of those deals where you're like, whoa, holy shit. Yeah
it was like the way he portrayed being Iron Man and Tony Stark, and you were like, I love that when you are Tony Stark, you are a bit of a dick, and
sure,
so full of yourself,
right?
But then when you became Iron Man, you became humble in knowing that, like,
right.
There's a larger purpose to life than just being rich and all that stuff, and it kind of made for a really deep storyline where you're like, oh, I can get invested in this. I can see how this would be an interesting thing to follow versus just like another dumb or like overly CGI'd comic book movie.
Yeah,
because like not Marvel but DC had been trying and been failing at Supermans and Batmans for a while.
Yeah,
they
I kind of like how dark DC is, compared to Marvel. Like, Marvel's is very like, Marvel reminds me of like the jock dude in high school who's like, he's tall and blonde and he's got great hair and he's just super strong and shit like that. And then DC is like the goth kid who's like really artistic and really like, kind of brooding and shit like that. And it's just like, it's kind of fun to see those two things because it's really encapsulates like Batman, for example. It is this dark kind of backstory about this rich kid. His parents got murdered and now he's like wants to be a vigilante pretty much. And then I don't know. It's just it's kind of interesting. It's kind of a interesting both sides of the coin deal.
Yeah, I mean, like, take Batman for example. When you look at Batman's character of so much intense loss at such an early age,
right?
Almost everybody can relate in one way or another to whatever childhood bullshit happened to them.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be the murder of both parents, but like everybody's got something, right?
Yeah.
So it's easier to kind of connect on the level of going like, I can see how you can go down this really dark path and then come out on the other side as the protector and the savior of the innocent and whatever the arc of Batman is.
Sure.
Does he go through a bad spell at all? Like,
yeah, I mean he loses his parents. He grows up with Alfred and things like that, and then he comes back to Gotham and he he's about to kill like the guy who killed his parents or whatever, and then he gets stopped and then he leaves and he does the whole fucking like with like the ninjas, I guess. I can't remember, like Ra's al Ghul.
Where he goes off into like the mountains and
right.
is retrained and like has to kind of kill his old self to actually embrace who he was always meant to be and all that stuff.
Yeah, and then he comes back and he runs Wayne Enterprises and shit. It's crazy. It's always interesting to me how a comedian or a comedic actor, or a comedic director directed one of the darkest supervillain movies. I mean, the Joker, right? Who fucking
Joaquin Phoenix's Joker?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that one.
It's so fucking good.
I've heard.
So fucking good. And the what's funny? The director of it. Have you ever seen Old School?
Yeah, of course.
Dude, you know that dude that like knocks on the door and he's like, "Hello." And he's like, "What are you doing here?" He goes, "Oh, I'm here for the gangbang."
Oh yeah,
dude,
yeah.
That dude directs fucking Joker. That's insane to me. I'm like, that's crazy. And he's such a funny, like, such a really good comedic director, but he directed something really, really dark, and it kind of just shows how comics they got kind of like a dark side to a lot of them,
Well, I kind of look like how it's like Bob Odenkirk.
Yeah.
You know him, right?
Oh yeah.
And for the longest time, we knew him as a comedic actor, and he was funny and all this stuff. And then out of nowhere, he does. God, I can't remember the name of the film.
Better Call Saul.
No. The one where he's like an ex-army hitman. Nobody. Thank you.
It's so
How
good.
could I not remember the movie called Nobody? But it's one of those things where you're looking at it and you're like, I believe that you could possibly be this scary of an individual.
Right.
Like, you could be this domicile dude that fucks up the trash every Tuesday on the pickup, but like you could kill 400 people with no problem.
Yeah, like dudes walk all over you, but you have no problem walking into like a Russian mob nightclub with a fucking claymore, and you're like, what are we doing here, guys? Are we ready to fucking die? Like, what's going on? And it's like, it's cool, man. I was in the military for like 6 years, and I've met a lot of like bad motherfuckers too, and you wouldn't expect you think like, oh, this is just like this is Jake, nice guy, but really Jake's got 35 confirmed kills, and 2 of those are with a knife. You know what I mean? You're like, Jake's an accountant now. That's insane to me. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of those like sleepers out there who are bad motherfuckers, but you wouldn't expect.
First of all, thank you for your service.
You're welcome. I appreciate it.
No, I mean, look, I know I've had a couple of different folks here that have had military backgrounds, and they always kind of have that same reaction you do.
Yeah.
But honestly, for me, I wasn't born in this country.
Right.
And I was born in a country that, for the longest time, didn't have freedom because we were under the Soviet regime.
Sure, yeah.
And when that all went to hell, and Armenia tried to become a country, it took a long time before governments could be placed and really like good people could be in power and good to, I guess, to the best extent that anybody in power could want to do good.
Yeah.
So here, it's different because your army is voluntary.
Right.
Over there, it's mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
So, those that serve over there, I have the highest regard for them too. But those that serve voluntarily here, understanding that the underlying foundation of this country is built upon the blood, sweat, and tears of other Americans who were willing to be selfless. I appreciate that.
It's like, when I hear people say thank you for your service, I'm a huge history buff, really, really into that. And like, I think about like the dudes from like the Revolutionary War, War of 1812, the Civil War, all these dudes who like, their blood is what the foundation of this country is built on. You know what I mean? And then, I think about like the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, and I have a lot of buddies who are Iraq and Afghanistan vets and things like that. And it's a lot more complicated of an issue than freedom and not freedom. You know what I mean? Like, there's a whole thing about us going over there for oil and fake WMDs, and it's so political now. And I do think everybody who served over there, I mean, they do deserve some sort of thank you, and obviously things like that. But I feel like wars back in the day used to be a lot more simple. You know what I mean? And now they're just so convoluted and kind of weird, and there's just so many like hidden agendas, and we're like, oh, are we over here for oil, or are we over here to like start a democracy? Are we here to overthrow a regime, or are we here to put in our people who are going to sell us oil at a fucking cheaper rate than this country will, or whatever, right? And there's just, I don't know, man. There's a lot that kind of goes into that part of it,
I get what you're saying, but I think there might be an aspect to it, and I truly believe this, that even those other wars had their ulterior motives. It's just, it was so far before technology could keep awesome records like we have today.
Yeah.
It was much easier to kind of put it in the weeds and nobody noticed what the actual underlying reason for World War I, World War II.
Yeah.
I understand the Revolutionary Wars.
Sure.
Because those were pivotal in this country's foundation.
Yeah.
But World War I and World War II, Vietnam, all of this stuff, there's got to be a certain degree of, I guess, fuckery would be the word to use for it.
It really started in Vietnam. Vietnam was...
Definitely. The Gulf of Tonkin incident and all the BS that was fed to...
Yeah, Jim Morrison's dad started it. That's insane. Do you know that?
I didn't know that, no.
So, dude, listen to this
shit. The Doors, Jim Morrison?
Do you want to hear a fucking conspiracy theory right now?
Yeah. Let's put the hats on.
Okay. Here's my tinfoil. Jim Morrison is not... Nobody in the Doors were, like, classically trained musicians. The Doors are one of the only mainstream rock bands to not have a bass player.
No shit.
Yeah. There's no bass line in any of the Doors songs. And they have like a synthesizer.
Yeah, okay.
So that was like kind of like their bass line, right? So they have a drummer, a guitarist, Jim Morrison on vocals, and then a synthesizer, right? So Jim Morrison's dad was an admiral in the Navy.
Wow.
He is the admiral that was the Gulf of Tonkin was his ship and his fleet and all this stuff, right? And so there's a conspiracy theory out there that says Jim Morrison's dad, was like a CIA plant. They started, the Gulf of Tonkin, which kicked off the Vietnam War, and then Jim Morrison did this counterculture, was like one of the biggest bands in the counterculture movement.
Yeah.
The first song they wrote, like, "Come on, baby, light my fire."
Yeah.
That was the first song that dude ever wrote. It went like double platinum. They said like, there's a conspiracy theory out there that says that the CIA and the FBI all like made the band The Doors to start the counterculture movement, so we have more of a foothold in Vietnam due to the fact that it's like you don't want to be like these hippies that are smoking weed and stuff like that. You want to be like an American. It was like propaganda, pretty much is what they say. I don't know, but there's a lot of shit that's going on in The Doors where you're like, this is crazy. And then like Jim Morrison like used to tell people like his parents died in a car accident. And he was an orphan and shit like that, but
which is all bullshit.
Really, he comes from like a military family, and it's and his dad is pretty much responsible for the Vietnam War. It's such a crazy kind of swing of things. You know what I mean?
I mean, I've heard the whole conspiracy theory of the CIA is behind the whole hippie movement and all of this stuff because it kind of exactly like you said played into their whole. You don't want to be like these losers. You want to be a real, salt of the earth American. Like you want to fight for your country and freedom and democracy. And
instead of people getting mad at the Vietnam War, they were getting mad at the counterculture movement and like the hippies and the free love and stuff like that. It was an easier target. It was a target at home, right?
Right.
That the American people, the nuclear family, and all this stuff that the American people like stood for. They're like, oh yeah, well, I don't want my kids to be these fucking pot smoking, sex crazed hippies, right? They need to be like these good dudes that are going to Vietnam that are fighting for democracy. And you're like, is that really what we're over there for? I don't know. I dropped out of junior college. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I don't know, dude.
No, but I mean, look, we all have the same access to the internet and we all have seen the same declassified documents that kind of proves the Vietnam War was a whole bullshit catastrophe that should have never happened. And the hippies were right.
Right.
Muhammad Ali was right.
Yeah.
Like all of these people from day one were right and going like, why am I going to go kill these people that have literally done nothing to me at all?
Like every other war up until then, you can kind of, you'd be like, all right, well, that makes sense, right? Like if you go to, World War II, obviously, started with, Pearl Harbor. That's why I went to the Japanese theater. And then, we were helping our allies in the European theater. And they knew that if Hitler conquered Europe, he was going to come to America next.
Which was not going to happen.
Yeah, it may be. Who knows? There was subs. I think they found subs in like Cuba, or not in Cuba, in like around Florida and like up in the Northeast and stuff like that, like Nazi subs that were like kind of, doing shit over there. And then World War I. I think what happened?
The Ottoman Empire, my people get desecrated. Over 1 million of Armenians are killed.
Yeah.
And this is women, children, intellectuals, not military men.
Exactly, yeah.
And there's this entire war around all of that. That's like one blimp of it. But there's an entire world war that happened where Germany, again, lost.
Right.
And Germany, again, was the bad guy.
Yeah. And then it, started with like the assassination of Franz Ferdinand and all these people. And then, we got into that by the sinking of the Lusitania because there was American citizens on that, and a German U-boat, a German submarine pretty much sunk the Lusitania and all this stuff, and they were like trying to convince Mexico to invade us and all this shit. So we're like, we're not putting up with this. Like there was stuff in all these other wars that we were like, all right, I can kind of see why we went to war. But then you get to Vietnam and you're like, wait, why the fuck were we here for 10 years? What happened?
And we did like absolutely nothing.
Yeah, we like
for the good. We fucked everything up and then just left. Oh, kind of like Afghanistan.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
how does that sound so familiar at some point?
Yeah,
oh yeah,
dude.
that's right. But we spent 20 years in Afghanistan
Yeah,
instead of 10. But we still left it a shit show worse than it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's like with when they left, they were like, oh, there's literally like a side by side comparison of like the last helicopter out of Saigon and the last helicopter out of, I don't know where it was in Afghanistan, but
I'm trying to remember the name of that airport. Shit.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds like something you'd order from a food truck.
Yeah.
You know, I'd order it too. It sounds fucking delicious. You know. You ever had halal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh hell yeah.
So fucking good. Yeah.
Look. Here's the other thing. Like, we need to preface this by saying, probably the best things we've gotten out of a lot of these wars is really good food.
Oh yeah.
We've imported so much other people's food here.
Absolutely.
Like, when you ask what is American food, there's a huge that goes on until somebody's like, well, barbecue. You're like, that's not technically ours.
Yeah.
They're like burgers. It's from Hamburg, not ours again. And you're like, we kind of don't have much of anything that is actually ours.
Right.
But we do have a bunch of people that came from other cultures that just make really good stuff here.
Exactly. Yeah. It's literally like, if you think of like the most American things, right? You think of beer, hot dogs, hamburgers, French fries. All of those are from other countries.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like beer and hot dogs, those are from Bavaria and Germany and things like that, and Hamburg from Germany as well. And then
we apparently took a lot of shit from the Germans.
Yeah, fuck, dude. We took a bunch of their scientists after World War II.
Almost all of them. Yeah, that's how we got our nuclear weapons program. We got NASA out of that.
Yeah.
We got so much.
If it wasn't for Operation Paperclip after World War II, where we did get all the Germans, I mean, it's just, we'd be a totally different fucking country.
Which is the other thing that like drives me up a wall is this innate hatred of the Russian people.
Yeah.
And I've always asked this question to people that hate Russia, and I'm like, exactly what has happened for us to hate them so much? And then people are just like, well, because they're our enemy. I'm like, okay, cool. How many people have died at the hands of the Russians who are Americans? And they just sit there going like, none. How many times have we been at war against each other? Never. How many times have we been at war together? Oh, yeah, that's right. World War II, we kind of joined up together.
For a little bit, yeah.
For a little bit, because we both understood that the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Exactly. Man, there's a really kind of a cool fuck you story to Russia that out of the United States. And like, I agree with you too. Like, I think the Russian culture is very, very interesting. I think Russian people are tough as fucking boot leather.
Oh yeah,
right. You have to be to live in that part of the fucking world.
Look at the UFC right now.
Right, they're
who's clearly dominating the UFC at the moment.
Yeah, it might as well be the Dagestani fucking
It's the Chechens, the Dagestanis, it's the Serbians. It's like all of these
everybody. Yeah,
post-Soviet era badass motherfuckers that are like,
right?
What, you guys do shit together and like try to roll. We do it with bears, bro.
Yeah,
Come
it's like,
on.
oh, you guys don't wrestle bears?
Yeah,
what
like,
a bunch of pussies, dude.
And you're sitting there kind of going like, oh, fuck, they're kind of right.
Yeah, dude. So there's a group, and they're like a mercenary, the Wagner group. You ever heard
of course I've heard of the Wagner group. Their leader got assassinated like a couple of months ago in an airplane accident.
I know, right? Jesus. If you ever get famous, man, you need to stay away from fucking airplanes, dude. I tell you what, that's how they all get you. But there was an air base, or there was a forward operating base in Syria that Americans had, and the Wagner group was just fucking it up, like artillery, mortars, hitting stuff like that. So our people called their people and were like, hey, you need to tell these guys to stop shelling us, or we're gonna have to fucking fire back. And Russia was like, we don't have any troops in that area. And they were like, good to fucking go, dude. And for like 19 hours or something like that, the Americans just fucking rained down, like, I'm talking like gunships, mortars, fucking Predator drones, all this shit in a 1 square mile radius where all these dudes were. And the Marines that went to go do the after action report, like to go check like the area, they said there was no living organisms alive in that 1 mile radius.
Jesus.
And they called back Russia and they were like, hey, we just want to let you know there aren't any Russians in the area. You were right. And they didn't like call back or anything like that. But it was like one of those things of like, all right, dude, fuck, we tried to tell you, And
try to be nice, but you didn't want to take it.
I think people really don't understand that, like, you don't hate the people. You hate the government of that country.
But
right?
that's the convoluted thing. Is like there's almost a hate for all Russians because we don't like our news media doesn't say the Russian government sucks or did this or did that. They're just like the Russians. You're like, what do you mean the Russians? Do you want to say the Americans for every bullshit thing we've done?
Dude, I've met a a handful of Russian people, and I mean I have a buddy who's like he's an interpreter for the army. He speaks fluent Russian. He's told me a lot about the culture and stuff like that. And from what I know about them, they just want to. They're like everybody else. They just want to live. They want to make money. They want to raise families. All this shit. They're just like me and you. They just talk a little bit different, right? But their fucking government is just, it's like, I mean, dude, Putin's been in office for fucking 20 years or some crazy shit like that, right? And he's up for
forever.
Yeah, and he's up for re-election this year, and it's like, yeah, dude, I don't hate Russian people. Like, I don't like that their government doesn't allow them to do shit, right? Just like how I don't like our government doesn't allow us to do shit.
I agree with that.
And
I'm on the same page as you. But I bet you anything, if you put a bunch of Russian dudes and a bunch of American dudes in a room together and you give them, like, just food and alcohol, they'd be friends.
Yeah, they'd be
There's
great.
no reason you guys, like, all of us and all of them wouldn't just be hanging out and be like, you motherfuckers are cool, man. This is awesome.
Exactly, right? But then if you go to like Taliban or fucking ISIS or any of these is radical.
Not so much.
Yeah, as radical Islamic groups, like it's I think it's the ideas that people have is what people hate about people, right?
Well, I mean, radicalized rednecks aren't fun either.
No, like, dude,
you know what I mean? Like, they're annoying as fuck.
Dude, I'm from a super small town in New Mexico. I have a bunch of friends and a bunch of family that are these quote unquote radical people, or they're people with crazy ideas that have just been fucked over one too many times, and that's where
I think that's where the ideas come from. It's like people got screwed enough times, and they're like, well, yeah, probably it's their fault because nobody wants to take responsibility for if I really think about it and trace my steps back. Yeah. I fucked it up,
right?
5 years ago, and this is just like a stream until it gets fixed one day.
Yeah, like dude, rednecks hate the government because the government is constantly fucking people over, right?
Right.
Like these dudes work super hard blue collar jobs, and they get their check, and they're like, oh, the government took out a third of the money I made this month or this week. Like, fuck them, you know what I mean? Or they're working their ass off to try to provide for their family, and they see somebody, another fucking redneck family taking, welfare whenever they're perfectly fine, or the dude had a slip and fall accident when he's fine. You know what I mean? And it's like, and that's where a lot of these ideas come from. Is like, it's what's happening around us that is what makes us it. And I mean, that's why I'm a really big proponent of going out and being in a bunch of different cultures. Because, dude, I used to be a small-minded fucking redneck dude from New Mexico. You know what I mean? Like, and all this shit. And then I moved around the country and kind of learned a lot about different people and different cultures and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, it's hard to put everybody in a box like that. You know what I mean? And, yeah, and I mean, it's like, I don't know. I bet if anybody in ISIS went to a gay, like a nightclub, they would love it. They'd just be like, this is great.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know, to be honest with you.
Yeah, probably not.
How repressed are you as a radicalized fundamentalist Muslim? That, maybe deep down inside, maybe there is something you may have feelings that, you might be gay and you're the only way I can be okay is just the extreme other end of just kill all the infidels.
Or if they just had a gay friend, and they're like, oh, this dude's fucking, dude, gay dudes are fucking hilarious. They're so fucking funny. And I mean, if they just had a gay dude over there that was just kind of sassy and stuff like that. Can you imagine a gay ISIS guy? And he's like,
that would be the best thing ever.
He's like, guys, should we really bomb them?
And he's the one on the videos and stuff.
Yeah. And he's like, you guys have been bad. He's like, I'm going to put on this vest. Ooh, it's Louis.
And what's interesting is if you actually get to know normal, regular, Arabic people who are Muslim or anybody else who's Muslim, you're like, you're not that different from us.
No, I mean, it's an Abrahamic religion, and it's kind of very similar to Catholicism like me or Judaism or anything like that, right? I'm like, oh, yeah, we have the same God. We just call them different names, and you think this guy's the guy, and I think this guy's the guy. You know what I mean? I think it's Jesus. You think it's Muhammad. It's just one of those things, right?
And it's like, all right, Well, doesn't that kind of still go back to we all believe in the same upstairs?
Yeah.
Somehow it feels like we're all believing in the same God. It's just the messenger is different for some reason, and we want to kill each other over that shit.
Right.
And you're like, hang on, man. Like, it's not the way it works. If it's the same dude giving, multiple people the message, you ever thought that he was just trying to spread the word?
Right. Dude, it's a pretty big word.
Yeah.
You're going to just trust one fucking guy, one guy that just dies,
And that's my problem with all centralized major religions or religion in general. I'm like, at some point, I have to go beyond belief in a higher power and have to start believing the words of other men.
Yeah.
And I have a humongous problem with that because I'm like, are you telling me that all of us that have ever existed, man, woman, doesn't matter, all of us have lied except for this exact group of people,
right?
Be it for Muslim faith, Catholicism, Christianity, Judaism, Hindu, whatever it is. I'm like, those guys are the only ones that never, ever lied, and all of the words inside of what they've given you is the truth.
Right.
And then on top of that, all the people that translated all this stuff until you got to the English Bible that you're reading or, your Arabic version of the Quran or whatever it is, I'm like, all of that makes sense to you. Like, you want to blanket believe that nobody lied.
Yeah, and also nobody fucked it up along the way.
Yeah, and
like you're telling me, how many times have somebody told you a story and you go to tell somebody a story and you're like, oh, fuck, how does that go? Oh, yeah, and then you tell them and you're like, then somebody corrects you later and you're like, oh, really? Damn, that's crazy. I shouldn't have said that. But
after every single podcast that'll happen, I'll probably end up thinking Franz Ferdinand started World War I. Obviously, no, but you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I'll mix it up with Jim Morrison's dad for some reason. Like, is it Franz Ferdinand? But that's because it's normal. It's human nature.
Exactly.
Because this is a long conversation, right?
Right.
Well, have you seen how big the damn book is?
Yeah, it's thick.
Before it was a book, it was orally told from one to another.
And then before it was a book and then it was orally told, in the middle, it was on a fucking scroll in another language that it doesn't have the same shit. Like an arc there's not another word for it, or like some of the shit just doesn't directly translate, right? Like there's not a word for homosexuality in the Bible. So it just says when a man lies with another man, and you're like, does that mean like sleep in the same bed, stay in the same house? Like, what do you mean? Like, are they fucking or are they napping? Like, what's going on? What's like the real...
Which is my other problem, right? Like, it's been sitting in my head for a while now, and I can't seem to figure out a logical answer to it, is why do we care so much?
Yeah, that's another thing,
I've never fucking understood why we give such... Like, I get it. Don't influence kids. Don't fuck with the kids.
Sure.
Because they're kids. That makes sense. But, like, at the end of the day, why have we ever, not to mention including now, given a fuck about who fucks who as an adult or who you want to live with or whatever that... Or if you want to be alone, even that is stigmatized. Like, if you don't want to be married with kids, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And I've just been sitting there going like, we don't need to like worry about populating the earth as much as we may have 3,000 years ago, where that may have made sense to kind of like,
and that's probably where
we're all going to die off. Come on, we need to like fuck.
And that's probably where that came from, right? It's like, oh, you shouldn't fuck a dude. You should definitely procreate, right? Like reproduce and be fruitful, be fruitful and reproduce and things like this and populate the earth. But I mean, that was back when there wasn't a lot of fucking people around, right?
And the life expectancy was so low because disease and modern plumbing, and
if you made it to 50, you were crushing it.
Yeah. If you're like, okay, that's an elder, man. That's an elder right there. You need to listen to him. He's 38. Like he's seen some shit.
He's fucking been around. You're like, all right, dude.
But then you look at it, you're like, oh, that's right. Up to 60% or 70% of all kids died right after birth because nobody understood sanitation and cleanliness and all this other stuff. And you're like, okay, all of that made sense, kind of.
Sure.
But it also should have made sense for us to at some point go like, yeah, this is not an issue anymore. Do whatever the fuck you want.
It is one of those things of like, if you got to think, let's say the fucking earth had a major catastrophe, right? Let's say Dallas had a major catastrophe and there was 100 people left. Right,
which I think they've gotten to the point where they're like, it's happened a few different times in human history.
I think the last,
the younger, drier impact theory is the one, the prevailing one right now, and they can't actually like pinpoint exactly what happened, but they do know something catastrophic happened.
Right, and it was down to like 7,000 people in the world.
Yes,
which is crazy. That's like, dude, that's like half a Matt Rife show. That's insane.
Shout out to Matt Rife. I love that guy.
Shout out to Matt. He's a good dude. But if it got down to 100 people and you were like, okay, guys, listen, listen, I love YMCA as much as the next guy, but we got to start fucking women. You know, we got to start getting babies out there and reproducing, getting more people out here, because here's the deal. Now we have a tribe, and we need to make this tribe bigger. We need to make sure there's people here around us, because if not, we're going to die off. You can still bang these dudes, but we definitely still need to start reproducing. I'd be like, okay, I mean, it's a plausible thing. I get it, right? Whatever. But then, you know, after a while, things are going, now we have 10,000 people. I'm like, all right, yeah, we're fine. It's cool. We don't have to do this anymore, right? Or whatever. Or like, hey, guys, we need to stay away from pork. Just listen, I love barbecue as much as the next guy, but there's no way to know if this pork's good. And if you bring disease or something like that into this tribe, it's going to fuck us up. So we can't do that, right? And then an easy way to tell people this, because people are naturally going to be like, well, why not? Why can't we? And it's like, well, because God said so. Just don't fucking do it. You know what I mean?
Right. And if it's like, if you're talking about the time period where it's like, not everybody's literate. Most people are not. And they have to be told by someone else what are in books and what the information is and why they should listen to it. All of that makes sense. And then it kind of still doesn't for me. Because I'm like, why wasn't there that one gay dude that stood up and go like, listen, we'll fuck all the women and get them pregnant, but like, can we still do what we want to do? Like, I'll just have Johnny stand in the corner naked and I can fuck your wife, no problem.
Yeah,
but like, I still want to fuck Johnny at the end of the day. Is that cool with you guys? And I feel like somehow we should have deliberated on this, going like, all right, Steve, that makes sense too. We're going to repopulate the earth and you still enjoy your life. All right, fuck it. Let's do it.
I think the dude that wrote that in the Bible was a gay guy. He was like bi, and he probably got burned by too many dudes. And he was like, you know what? Nobody's going to, you know what, Daniel, you piece of shit. And fucking no more fucking sex with men. I fucking hate, you know what I mean? It's just like, and that's why he can't, like, he was just like, nah, he's like, nobody can have him. I'm done. You know, I don't know. I'm an idiot. That's an interesting painting. I like that. Where'd you get that?
So a friend of mine's daughter painted that, and it represents her journey through high school.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I saw the painting, and I fell in love with it, and I was like, I really want this, so I purchased the painting.
That's a really good painting. I like that a lot.
I got it back in the day in LA, and I was just like, this is a really cool painting. I love it.
It's pretty wild that, like, how just, like, not arbitrary, subjective art is. You know what I mean? Because, like, you see this and you're like, oh, that's beautiful, like, all this stuff. But, like, she's like, oh, yeah, this is my high school journey, right?
Right.
And the longer you look at it, you're like, oh, I can kind of see that, right? But then, like, it's crazy to think that, like, that's art. And then also, like, a statue is also art. And then when people call stand-up art, that's, like, another thing, too, that I'm like, man, I don't know if it's a stretch or what, but it just don't seem like in the same category, right? Like painting a picture and telling a joke.
Think of it this way. You got a whole host of people that are doctors, right?
Right.
And then there's specialties within that.
Of course.
So think of it that like you have medicine is art,
right?
And within that are different practitioners of medicine in different forms.
Yeah.
One can be a surgeon, the other one can be a pediatrician, internal medicine. I think of it in the same realm because I do see as stand-up comedians as artists.
Right.
There's no denying what you do is create art because what is the underlying definition of art? Well, it's to invoke an emotional response.
Right.
Doesn't matter what it is. A statue, a car can be a work
of
art. I mean, it is for me.
I mean, that's how subjective it is. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I mean, you look at like a, you know, I don't know, like a 69 GTO, and you're like,
oh yeah,
you're like, oh my God, that's beautiful. You know what I mean?
Or you hear like a 1980s Porsche 911 naturally aspirated just rolling down, you know, the DFW park, and you're just like, oh my God, that sound, that like raw.
Yeah.
And then you read about it, and you're like, oh shit, there was a dude there that was tuning that engine to make that specific type of sound because it made more sense harmonically and it just sounded better. And you're like, that's art.
I really like to look at stand-up as more of a craft than an art. Anthony Bourdain, he talked about chefs, and he's like, he said, I like to think of chefs as craftsmen more than artists, because when you're an artist, it allows you to be like this. It allows you to be, think you can be late for work and think of, and kind of think of yourself in that nature. But like when you think of stand-up as a craft, right? Because art is like, this could have been the first painting that girl did, right? Probably, it was one of the first ones. and it just sold it, and now she's an artist, right? But to tell a joke or to write a song or to do something like that, and it become great automatically, I think that's a work of art, right, or something like that. But like it takes time to craft a joke, man. It takes hours and a lot of like bombing and a lot of just fucking like, oh, is this even a good joke? Do I even like this joke? I'm like, yeah, I guess I do. And then, you keep telling it and it's just getting like little, and then you tell it once and it fucking hits and you're like, yes, this is a great joke, right? And I look, I'm a welder and a pipe fitter by trade.
Okay.
And I like to
blue collar, kind of like hard labor.
Blue collar, like, yeah, since I was like 16, that's all I've ever done is blue collar jobs. So like I like art, I like learning about it, and I like, like learning about Van Gogh and, his fucking crazy ass and shit like that. And then like all these other artists, like Salvador Dali and Michelangelo, and you go back to the Renaissance and things like that.
Yeah, you got Rembrandt and Cezanne and all these other people.
Yeah,
Klimt and right, yeah. Well, Klimt isn't Renaissance, but he's one of my favorite painters.
I almost, it's almost more impressive to me to call it a craft than call it an art form, because like, you can.
Could it be both?
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's like a.
Because I feel like what you're telling me is that the process of creating the joke is the craft. The art is the stage delivery.
It's the product,
because
right?
that's where you're actually invoking the response, and the emotion that you're going for is laughter.
Yeah,
and it's probably one of the more difficult things to actually do right.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's really hard to, like you can probably teach me songwriting in a year, teach me how to be a songwriter, or teach me how to play guitar. It's
can't teach you to be a singer though.
You probably could, you might be able to, with like voice lessons and stuff. I could probably become a passable singer,
like decentish, right? But you're not gonna be, so. And people may hate me for this, but the dude that is playing piano at a restaurant, is not an artist for me.
No,
the concert pianist who composes their music and is really on the upper echelons of that, like small, really 1% of the people that ever make it to being a symphony harmonic, like just doing that kind of stuff where they're a concert pianist and they're widely regarded. That's the art,
right? I think if you need to consider somebody an artist, it has to come from a place of originality, right? So
stand-up is that in and of itself. I mean, because you will be a fraud if you're trying to pass somebody else's comedy as yours, because it never hits the same way.
Like, you don't go to karaoke, and if somebody sings a song at karaoke really well, you're not like, that person's an artist, right? The person who wrote that song is an artist, or a craftsman, or whatever you want to call it. Or maybe it's the same thing, maybe like art and being a craftsman is kind of in the same realm, and
also it's so interesting that, like, if you take religion as your foundation for why we exist, or you take evolution as the foundation for why we exist.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we have art? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I don't know, man. I think
it makes sense, and like science has tried to explain it as like rhythm is an easier way to kind of tell a story and have it be lasting.
Right.
And before we had language, drawing stuff on walls and caves and stuff to represent danger or whatever it was. I kind of get all that, but how do we go from that to Andy Warhol and Beethoven and Russell Peters and, like George Carlin and this humongous variety of what art is and the interpretation of it?
I think that, I think it's more of like, I'm a big believer in like we're just a little bit better dressed cavemen. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Like, I get exactly what you're saying.
So, like, in a tribe, right, if you had a story, right, stories were important, right, because stories would tell you about, oh, hey, bears and lions and disease and if you go to, like, Native American history, Native American folklore was very important to the culture. And the dude who told it the best, that dude was important to the tribe. And that dude was a coveted person, right, just like a medicine man or a witch doctor or whatever, right? And then also the dude, like, if you can't draw a fucking bison very well, but Ung can or whatever, you're gonna have that motherfucker painted on the wall first, right? You're going to be like, hey, I need you to paint this because you're a better artist than I am, right? And so that dude is important through storytelling. And I think as time goes on, you keep going and you keep learning, right? Like if you go to like, you know, it's like music and art and all this stuff. It's like, it's one of the only things that really separates us from like animals. You know what I mean? Like animals don't have art.
Well, they do though. Because
Like,
certain birds, like birds of paradise, their mating ritual is a very artistic thing where they fluff up their feathers and do these beautiful dances and things like this. And you're like,
but that's like a mating ritual,
right?
You know
but it's also an art. It's an artistic mating ritual versus I'll bring you the cutest pebble, or I will literally just kill your current protector, and now I'm your protector.
But that's the difference between us and them, is they see it as a mating ritual and we see it as art.
Yeah, I guess you are. I mean? You're right. Like we interpret it as like, wow, this is really beautiful. Right. It's almost like they're dancing and this,
it's like
rhythm to it. But then there's also this part of me that goes like, well, how come only a small percentage of people ever have been able to create art? If you really think about like all the people that have ever existed, what percentage, maybe 1% have created art?
You know, I think it's one of those things that everybody's capable of it. I think it's like murder. You know, let's get deep. Let's talk about murder. No, I'm just kidding.
Why not?
Let's talk about fucking murder.
Also, they say like artistic genius and sociopath walk a very fine line.
Very, very
like
fine
it's like
line,
you can one left turn and you're a serial killer.
Right. I mean, and a lot of great artists were fucking nuts. You know what I mean? Like Andy Warhol was insane. Jim Morrison was insane.
Kanye West is insane. But there's no denying that.
Yeah, but Graduation
as
is one
a
of the
musician, like fucking gay, man. How do you come up with that shit?
Right. Yeah. But Graduation, Early Registration, like all of those albums are fucking great. Yeah. But this dude's insane. You know what I mean?
But shouldn't it come with a level of insanity?
Absolutely, right?
Because you have to be on the fringes to actually see the world in such an abstract way that you can put together these musical notes out of nothing.
Right.
It's just in your head. You just wake up one day and go like, I'm going to write Jesus. Why not?
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, and the whole world is going to love it.
Yeah.
Or you're going to do Gold Digger, and everybody's going to love that.
I love Gold Digger. Jamie Foxx is the fucking best.
Dude, Jamie Foxx is the GOAT.
He's so good at everything. But... dude, I can't remember what the question was, but
I don't even know if there was one. I think we were just talking about like how art is so interesting and diverse. And
I think the question was why can only 1% of the population do it? I think.
Oh yes, yeah. Why it's so interesting that only 1% has ever done it?
I think everybody's capable of it, right?
Just like murder.
And we're back. So I think everybody's capable of art, right? But it just might not hold enough sway in you for you to pursue it, right? Like my dad's a very like tough dude, like really like a man, a hardworking dude, right? And like,
isn't it funny? You can tell when you look at a person how their dad is,
right?
Like with certain people, you can tell. Like you're looking at you're like, not that your dad was a hard ass or something, but like he was a no nonsense kind of guy.
Yeah, like he's super funny and likes to mess around, but he doesn't fuck around too, you know, at the same time. And like if I would have told you my dad's a concert pianist, you'd been like, no fucking way. But like my dad was a firefighter, he was a contractor, like, you know, very like masculine, right? Not very. He like loved comedy, right? Because most blue collar dudes do.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, and then
there's an entire tour called the Blue Collar Comedy Tour.
Exactly, right?
Like, it was Bill Engvall and Larry the Cable Guy.
Buddy, who are you talking to? You don't think I know this fucking...
I'm sure. Your name's Maverick, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Come on, you would know all these people. By the way, any connection to the movie? Are you named after the movie Maverick?
I'm named after the...
Mel Gibson's film?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that the... Oh my... It's one of my favorite films.
You know how his name's Brett Maverick?
Yeah.
My dad's name's Brett.
Oh, no shit.
So he was named after that. I have two sisters named Morgan and Miranda, and I'm the youngest, and they're like, we need a M name. And they're like, well, how about Maverick? And so I was named after that. I was originally the James Garner TV show, Maverick. But yeah.
And if you want to see a highly sexist movie that's just really good, watch Maverick.
It's really good, yeah.
It's fucking awesome.
Mel Gibson's a good...
I mean, you can't have your woke blue-haired hat on for that shit because you'll be pissed 2 minutes into it.
Yeah, it was also made in the 90s, too. It was great, too. I loved it. That's a good movie, dude.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites because I saw it as, like, first time as a kid, and it was just, like, gambling and debauchery, and there's a sailboat and all this cool shit, and you're like, I like this.
Yeah, this is great, dude. A funny riverboat gambler.
It was like the Western movie without people dying nonstop.
Yeah, it's awesome, right? But like going back to the art thing, dude, is like my dad's this like, you know, blue collar kind of, you know,
yeah, firefighter
tough
and
dude,
all that
you know.
stuff.
But one day I was at his office. He was working. He was managing this oil safety company at the time, and we were just hanging out. We were about to go to lunch, and I was just talking to him, and he's like, "You like poetry?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I'm gonna read you some poems." And he's like, he read me some poems that he really liked. No, I got Copenhagen, but
you're old school.
Yeah, but I was actually about to put one in.
That's how you know he's got a real man sitting there. I've got my synthetic Zen bullshit going on, and he's like, "I got a Copenhagen, son. I got it."
Yeah, it kind of blew me away. Like I knew my dad liked music and comedy and things like that, right? But like him liking.
What was it like, Robert Frost or something? Or
no, it was just like
just something random he saw.
They were just like small poems. I think he wrote a couple of them.
Wow.
You know, and it's like, he's just like a fucking interesting dude. But growing up, nobody told my dad, "Hey, you could be a famous poet," right? You know,
right.
It's just like a lot of. I mean, I grew up watching stand up, and I was like, "Dad, I love stand up. He's like, "Yeah, you should do it. You should do stand up." You know, he was like one of these dudes who's like, "Fuck it, why not?" Right? And you know, I'm really lucky that I had a dad like that. You know, like a dude that was like, "Yeah, try it. Why not? Fucking do it." You know.
And I think I think I don't know your dad, but I'm trying to take a page out of that for my kids, where I'm like, I'm stern. I won't pretend that like I'm, you know, a friendly like liberal daddy and
sure,
like,
yeah.
oh, everything's okay. No. I'll be a dick when I need to be a dick with my kids because I have 3 boys.
Yeah.
But at the same time, my number one thing has always been, when you grow up, try to do something that makes you genuinely happy.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is the most important thing for me. Is like, I want you guys to be content and happy with the life that you lead when you're older. Like, fuck the money. I'll deal with that for you.
Yeah.
But I want you guys to do things that are going to give you joy out of life. Because like, what's the point of telling my kids to go and become a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer? To what?
Yeah.
Waste away the potential of being something that it may not pan out. It could be a very tough road for over 10 years, like Matt Rife, 12, 14 years before the guy pops off.
Exactly.
But like, on the other end of that, Matt will have hopefully a very happy life going forward because he gets to do what he loves.
Yeah, to arenas, you know.
And if it's stand-up comedy, if it's being a poet, hell, maybe you want to be a firefighter, and that shit makes you happier than anything in the world. Well, go be a firefighter.
You know, my dad, very interesting guy. He didn't really have a father figure in his life.
Okay.
And he was a great dad, right? But without that frame of reference, there was, you know, some things that it was kind of hard for him to do, right? But
I like your dad already.
he always told me, he goes, "Man, I don't give a fuck what you do. Just don't half-ass it, and just finish what you start." Right?
Yep.
Like when I was little, I was playing on this baseball team. I didn't want to fucking do it anymore. I was like, "Dad, could I quit?" He goes, "Yeah, you can quit. When the season's done, you can quit." And I was like, "Cool." He goes, "I'd never make you do anything you don't want to do, but you're gonna start what you finish, because you're
gonna finish what you start." But
yeah, you're gonna finish what you start." And
I like that one more. Like, start what you finish.
Start what you finish, right? He's like, "You're gonna finish what you start." You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where like he's like, "You can do whatever you want, son. I'll support whatever you want to do, but don't fucking half-ass it, right? And always have a plan." You know, I was like, my dad was like, "Dude, I think you should go do comedy, try to become the best comedian you can, but you also need to be able to pay your fucking bills." And that's why I became a welder. Like, I became a combo pipe welder, which is a very hard thing to do in the welding community.
So why don't you hold on? Let's take a step back.
Okay.
Because side note.
Yeah.
You said you're a pipe fitter and welder, right?
Yeah.
Now, I want to know a little bit more about that because I generally have no idea. I understand what it is that you do because I know words, but that doesn't mean I know anything about that. Like, what does that mean to be a pipe fitter or a combo pipe fitter, welder, and all that stuff?
So I went through an apprenticeship with the union.
Okay.
A 5.5-year apprenticeship for pipe fitting.
5.5 years?
Yeah. So
holy shit.
So pretty much since I started comedy, I've been a pipe fitter, right? And I've worked for companies in California, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Texas. I've worked for like, you know, I just got done, like the last job I drug up from, I was at Samsung. We were building a Samsung chip processing plant.
Here?
In Austin.
No shit.
Yeah. So I've worked for like Samsung, Intel, Facebook, Tesla, Sandia National Labs, Los Alamos National Labs,
What kind of clearances you got?
I got a secret, but that's through the military.
Nice. Did that help you get some of these other jobs?
Yeah, I could just walk on base with. That was like one thing. If I worked for a contractor and they had a contract with like Los Alamos or Sandia or something like that, like I don't need to be escorted around. I can just show them my military ID and be like, hey, I have clearance to be here.
Right. You got X amount of clearance
Right.
that allows you to be free to walk around. Because like for people that don't understand, Los Alamos Labs,
Yeah.
Tesla, even Samsung, I'm pretty sure all of them have government contracts
Yeah.
or are the government.
Yeah, so like for Tesla, not really because we were in a fab shop, but we were building. Oh, and SpaceX.
There you go. They have government contracts, definitely.
Yeah, so I was at SpaceX before I was at Samsung, and we built SpaceX from like the ground up.
Okay.
Like I was there when it didn't have any walls.
So you're talking about the Austin plant.
Yes,
Okay. It's huge.
it's giant. We would drive trucks in the plant. It was insane. And then Samsung is the biggest job I've ever been on. There's 70 cranes on site, like 120,000 acres.
Holy shit.
Insane, right?
120,000 acres?
Yeah, just in the middle of nowhere in fucking Taylor, Texas.
I know where Taylor, Texas is.
Yeah, so
yeah, there's nothing there.
Yeah, my camper and fucking Samsung. So,
For now,
so
there'll be a whole city around that place.
Oh yeah, if you want to buy land, go buy land in Taylor. It'll be quadruple its value in 3 years. But
Is that what when the plant will come online?
it's like a 15-year project.
Wow.
Yeah, and it started this year.
Well, that was the whole initiative with the Biden administration to
Right.
get chip manufacturing back in this country.
Yeah,
Might be the only great thing about this administration.
Yeah,
and
'cause-
it'll bring jobs and a lot of stuff.
because I worked at Intel in Albuquerque too, where I'm from. And so anyway, so I'm getting sidetracked. So my stepdad's in the union.
Right.
I drop out of college. I'm doing open mics. I'm a bum. I'm bumming around, sleeping on friends' couches. No, nothing going for me. I've worked construction every year that I've been able to work.
Okay.
I took some welding classes in high school and I really liked welding, but I didn't know how to get into welding. So my stepdad was like, hey, you can join the union and they'll teach you how to weld and they'll teach you how to be a pipe fitter. So pipe fitting and plumbing kind of go hand in hand, right?
Stepdad and dad are two different people, I'm guessing?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get to that at a later point.
I'm not that white trash.
I'm
but
gonna put a pin in there somewhere.
So a pipe fitter is really just somebody who builds and maintains mechanical systems.
Okay.
So like for this building, right? Like what floor are we on?
4th.
So we're on the 4th floor, right?
Yes, sir.
So you're going to have pipes called risers coming from your mechanical room, right? That pushes all of your steam, all of the air for the AC, for the boiler, for all these stuff. So all of those systems and rooms and stuff like that, we build those. We do mechanical systems. Like for chip processing plants, we'll do like clean room stuff, things like that. So through the union, I learned how to weld all 3 welding processes, right? Stick, MIG, and TIG, right? The 3 major ones.
Okay. What's the difference between the 3?
So a stick, right? Arc welding is you have an electrode that you clip into a sting. We call it a stinger.
Okay.
And it burns down that electrode, and that's usually just for like, you can weld on this, but the most common thing to weld with it is carbon steel.
And the whole point of welding is to fuse 2 pieces of steel or some sort of metallic object together,
so
right?
2
Like
pieces,
copper can be welded together.
So 2 pieces of alloy, it's just to bond 2 pieces of alloy, right? So if it's like a steel kind of alloy, right, like stainless, carbon, mononel, Inconel, anything like that, it's welded. If there is copper, right, it's called soldering. You use like solder and flux. And then if there's another process called brazing, and that's usually on copper too. But it's just 2 different types of braze. A braze joint is going to be a lot stronger than like a solder joint. A weld joint is going to be a lot stronger than like a weld joint can hold a bunch of pressure. So I learned. So then there's 2 types. There's really 2 types of welding. There's structural, and then there's pipe.
Okay.
So structural is a lot easier than pipe because it's just one angle that you have to weld at, right? But for pipe, you have to weld at your angle is constantly changing around that pipe.
Because you have a diameter that you have to go around versus a flat plane.
So they say when you stick weld, right, when you arc weld, your rod should be at like a 17 degree plus or minus angle, right? So it should be 17 degrees either way. So when you're welding on plate, it's super easy to keep that rod angle. But when you're welding on pipe, that rod angle is constantly changing, and it's very difficult. Then you have TIG welding. TIG welding stands for tungsten inert gas welding. So you have your metal. When it's molten, it can be very, it's very fragile. Air that blows into the molten pool can fuck it up and cause, porosity or cause lack of fusion or something like that, right?
Uh-huh.
So on a welding rod, you have flux. Your flux protects your weld, and once your weld cools, you chip the flux off, and then you have your weld. For TIG welding, it is surrounded by a shielding gas, argon. Back in the day, you used to use helium. A lot of people might call TIG welding heliarc welding. That's where heliarc comes from. So argon will protect your weld, and once that weld cools, it's fine. But that argon will keep air out because argon's heavier than air. And then MIG welding usually does the same thing. There's a bunch of different types of MIG welding, but it stands for metal inert gas welding. So it's just like it's usually a spool of wire, and that wire is hits the metal, it becomes molten. It fuses your parent metals together, and it's surrounded by a shielding gas. And that gas is usually a mixture of CO2 and argon, something like that. And so you'll have like either a 25-75 or a 90-10 mixture, depending on the type of process. So I know a bunch of different type of welding processes through the union, and through my apprenticeship program that taught me all this stuff. So my dad was very big on like, hey, listen, I want you to go pursue your dreams. I want you to go be a comedian, but you need to have a plan when that's not paying the bills. So now that I went through that apprenticeship, I have a license in pipe fitting, mechanical process piping. I have a license in gas fitting, right? So like natural gas piping and stuff like that, screw pipe, things like that. And I also have a list of welding certs that I'm like qualified to weld with. Like for that job at Samsung, I had to take 4 weld tests to get on.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And for all you motherfuckers that have a liberal arts degree, you shouldn't have done that bullshit. You should have done what he did, because you would be making actual money.
Yeah, you should
and be contributing to society.
You should keep getting the liberal arts degree so welders can keep making all the money.
I mean, I know there's like a big lack of skilled laborers, right? In any industry right now.
One of my favorite statistics, I heard it a few years ago, and I don't know if it's true. I heard it from somebody, but they said the average age of a welder 10 years ago was 40. The average age of a welder today is 50. So that means there's not enough people because
it's not being replaced by a new generation that wants to do it.
Because it sucks. It is a hard fucking job. When I left Samsung, we were working 70-hour weeks.
Shit.
We were working 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, 6 to 4:30. I had to walk about a mile every day just to get into my plant. I had to badge in and out. I had to take 4 weld tests that had like I think it had like a 70-80% attrition rate, like of weld failures in that test. All of my welds had to be QC'd, and had to be quality controlled. So
right. So somebody had to come and check all your work and make sure it's properly done.
So I'd finish a weld. I'd have to call a guy. That guy has to come, look at my weld internally, externally, mark it, verified, QC okay. And then later that weld is going to get x-rayed to see if there's any impurities inside the weld.
So what are they looking for, like micro cracks and things?
So they're looking for anything like LOF, which is lack of fusion, right, where I didn't fuse the parent metals together. Porosity, where air got inside my molten, my puddle. Or, and then they'll look for like these things called dog nuts, which is over penetration in your root. They'll look for bevel, like if the bevel is showing, that's lack of fusion. Looking for BBs, right? Like little spatter. Looking for arc marks, right? Like if I dragged my lead over, out of the weld zone. That's
right.
So that's another disqualifier. So like people are like, you should go get a trade. Tradesmen and blue collar dudes are definitely a different breed. Like it's hard work, man. Like it's crazy. Like last summer I was working 7/12s for a couple months, and I was still doing comedy and shit. And it was just, it's a fucking
7 days a week, 12 hours a day.
Yeah, from 6 to 6.
Oh my God.
It was insane. But
and you were still doing opens, and you were doing stage time and all that stuff.
But I was only doing, I could only do like book shows because I couldn't like justify myself going to do like a mic or something like that, right? So I was just waiting for people to book me, which I was getting booked. So I was still averaging like 1 to 2 shows a week doing that. But it's a hard life, man. And you're away from your family. You're not going to be 30 minutes from your house every day. A lot of dudes spend 6-8 months away from their family, right? And it's a hard it's a hard life, dude. But
well, yeah, because you get called onto a project in the middle of nowhere, and it's like your wife and kids ain't gonna be coming out with you to be chilling there. You know what I mean? Like, it makes no sense.
Some dudes on like the pipeline, their old ladies will come be their helper. Like, so some dudes do that. Some dudes travel with their wives, you know, stuff like that. But it's a hard job, dude, and it's a hard life.
And it takes a special type of woman to kind of want to be part of that.
Yeah.
Like, people just don't seem to get how, like, you have a dedicated person that says, I believe in what you're doing, and if this is it, you're not doing anything else. You're going to be a welder, or you're going to be a long haul truck driver, whatever it is. I'm following you down that path because this makes sense to me.
You know, I'm pretty lucky that the girl I'm dating now, she understands that, right? And I've said this like on my podcast, is like, for that life, and even the life as a comedian, like, you need a special type of woman and a special type of partner who understands what's going on and where you're coming from and things like that. And, you know, and it's like, and they're not around every day, and they're not very common anymore. And, you know, it's
I genuinely know what you mean, man. Like, when I said, hey, we're moving to Texas.
Yeah.
And just leaving everybody behind.
Yeah.
95% of the women would have been like, fuck no. But then I got the one that's like, I'll follow you to the depths of hell.
Let's go, dude.
Yeah, she's like, I'm there. She's like, I know that there's like something at the end of this tunnel.
Yeah.
And even though neither of us can see the light, I still want to go down this darkness because it's you. And I'm just like, I'll be forever grateful to my wife for even giving us the opportunity to move to Texas and give our kids a better life. And I feel like you found someone that might end up being that ride or die person.
Oh, she's great, dude. I mean, like, it's one of those things where I had a journeyman one time when I was an apprentice. I had a girlfriend at the time. He's like, you dating? And I was like, yeah. He goes, he's like, is it your girlfriend or is it your old lady? I was like, what's the difference? He goes, a girlfriend's going to leave, and an old lady was going to bury a body with you. He's like, you need to find an old lady, kid. And I was like, all right, cool. And like,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably like the best advice anybody could ever hear. I think everybody should hear that, especially in today's society, man. Dude. We're so caught up on the bullshit versus finding someone that, you know, if you get home and like when my wife and I first met, I was a fucking loser to the nth degree, like horrible debt, no outlook on the future.
Yeah.
And it was like that person coming into my life, 180 change. I wanted to do more. I wanted to try harder because I was like, oh shit, there's a perspective here, and there's an opportunity for a really happy life.
Yeah.
I can't keep being a fuck up.
Yeah, exactly. Do you mind if I spit real quick? I'll be right.
Oh yeah, by all means.
Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. I'm sorry for this.
Anytime you need a break, yeah.
Oh fuck! I'm getting off my dad's roof yesterday.
Okay, tell me about that.
He's always doing something at the ranch or whatever, and
is that what was going on today? You were helping at your dad?
Yeah, so I was like, I went and stayed with my sister last night, and I helped my dad out this weekend. I had a show in Tulsa. That's where my girlfriend lives, and so
shout out to your girlfriend.
Hey, what up, dude? And so, you know, it was, you know, and then I was about to leave, you know, and we're doing, you know, it's like a long distance thing, so like, I was like spending time with her, and I was like, hey, I gotta go, I gotta get out of here. She's like, okay, and it was just one of those things where time got away from me, and she was like, I would have let you go. I was like, that's fine, we're okay, it'll be okay. But so yeah, my dad's getting older, you know, and this motherfucker is tough as Tarzan's feet, dude. I mean, just a bad motherfucker. And he was like, hey, before you leave, you know, I'd helped him out a few of his like properties. I helped him out on the ranch a little bit, and he was like, hey, I got some tree branches over my, you know, that are hanging over the house. Could you help me cut them down? I was like, yeah, sure, no worries. So, you know, heights never scare me, right? It's like it's a thing with like working in the trades. Like, you're going to be high up, you know, it's whatever. So I get up on the roof, and it's a 12-12 pitch, which means for every 12 inches this way, it goes up 12 inches that way, which ends up being a 45-degree angle, right? It's like one of the highest pitches you can get. And so I get on the roof, and I'm like, fuck, this is a lot steeper than it looks. And he walks up the ladder, hands me the chainsaw, and I start inching over to the limbs. And while I was going this way, I was also going this way, and I started picking up momentum, and I was like, fuck. And I was like, I hit the gutter, and I have the chainsaw in my hand. My dad's down there, and he just keeps saying, like, throw the chainsaw, just jump. And I was like, it's kind of crazy how fast your brain works in like a fast situation like that. I was like, okay, if I throw this chainsaw, It's in my right hand. My dad's right there. If I throw it, it's going to hit him, or I'm going to try to throw it over him, and I'm going to hit a window. I'm going to break the chainsaw, whatever. There's a patio table, right? Like a mesh wire table.
Okay, yeah.
There, and I was like, that's not very far down. I'll just land on that, and if I have to tuck and roll, I'll tuck and roll. So I landed, and he says he caught me, but I don't think that's real. He just kind of like stopped me, right? And I was like, and when I hit, I hurt my back like a few years ago doing some stuff in the military, and it's like a reoccurring thing. Every once in a while to like flare up, and it just fucking when I hit that table, it just kind of flared up again. So it was like I'm a little stiff, but it's all good. We didn't end up doing it, so I was like, fuck it, whatever. But yeah, so I'm a little stiff last couple days from falling off the roof. But yeah, man, dude, you get so much good knowledge from old like welders. Old welders are very smart dudes, you know, because they've just been around and they've made every mistake you can think of, and they know shit, right?
Well, yeah, because I mean, it's a tough life.
Yeah, there's a term in the trades called chasing the money, right?
Okay.
They'll say the money's on the road, go chase it. So that means, like, you know, like I said, like where you're at, there's a bunch of jobs going on right now. There's like Samsung and Taylor, which I was really blessed to be like, oh, this is really close to where I'm doing stand up. This is great. There's like Blue Oval in Memphis. There's shutdown seasons coming up. So like if you want to go make money on the road, it's out there. You know, like you can go work a shutdown for 3 or 4 months, and shutdowns are just where, just like it says, like there'll be like a refinery, a plant, something like that needs yearly maintenance, and they just shut the plant down for X amount of days, right? And so you're working usually like 7/12s for like really good money trying to get this plant operational in that time, right?
Because they're hemorrhaging money every day that they're closed.
Exactly, right. Yeah,
because they're not producing.
Right, and it might not be the whole plant. It might just be a one part of it, but that part might need to be up and running soon. You know what I mean? So like, you know, I was talking to this welder one time, and he's like, you gonna go? He's like, what are your plans when you turn out, when you become a journeyman? And I was like, I don't know, man. I think I'm just gonna go chase the money. He goes, man, chasing money is great, but you never catch it.
Ah, interesting.
And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he's like, dude, I've been a welder for 30 years. I've made more money than you can fucking imagine, and it's never enough. It's always more. It's never enough. And I'm like, but what if you save? He goes, even if you save, it's never enough, because you're always going to be, because that's our mentality. It's like, I need more, right? Because it's right there, you know? And he's like, dude, if you chase money, you're never going to catch it. And him telling me that made me rethink the whole thing of money, right? Like if I have enough money to take care of myself, right, I'm good. I don't need to be a millionaire. I don't need to be.
It wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, but also it wouldn't help anything, right? There's millionaires that kill themselves every year. Like money doesn't buy you happiness. It helps.
A certain amount does buy you happiness.
Right.
I've never been a believer in that. I think after you get to what is known as comfort.
Yeah.
And like longevity of comfort, meaning if your life isn't every month, and then your life isn't every 6 months.
Yeah.
You're really comfortable at a certain point, right?
Right.
Like I don't, not that I'm anywhere near that, but like I don't want to worry about next month's bills, but I still have to.
Sure.
I really don't want to worry about bills in 6 months, but I haven't gotten there.
Right.
But once you get to that point where like your year is blocked off into like 2 quarters.
Sure.
It's a lot easier to kind of like make heads or tails of it. But I think what happens with a lot of people when they make money is they accrue more shit than they actually need.
Yeah.
Like I was having a conversation with my wife today, and she's like, you know, you're down to like 6 T-shirts, dude. She's like, buy T-shirts. Like you need T-shirts. And I was like, yeah, I'll get around to it.
Sure. Yeah.
Because like I don't care.
Yeah. And the thing about it is money doesn't buy you happiness. Money buys you freedom. And
yes.
With freedom comes happiness. Right.
And if you got the money and you were a miserable fuck to begin with,
yeah.
and you don't know how to channel that
right.
income into what makes you less miserable and then
yeah.
finally gets you to a baseline of content and then work towards happy,
right.
you're going to be that same guy crying in your Porsche.
Like if I made $52,000 a year, that's fine by me. Because I live in a camper. I live in an RV. I don't have a lot of bills. I don't have children. I have a dog. Like it's not like
that number grows exponentially once you have a wife,
Exactly,
and kids, and like.
So like
I can't live on 50 a year.
Yeah, so right
It's
now,
impossible.
so right now, 50 a year, that's fine with me. I'm good. $1,000 a week, if I made $1,000 a week, I would be fine. I'd be more than fine, right? I'd be able to put money away, you know. As a welder, you know, on like a 40-hour a week check, that's about what you make about $1,000 a week, you know. I mean,
which is really good money.
Yeah, that's great money. You know what I mean? And it's like, and you get paid every week. It's not bi-monthly. It's every fucking week you're getting a check.
So when you're doing 7/12s, like, does OT kick in and all that stuff? So like that check becomes a lot bigger.
Oh yeah, like when I was doing 7/10s, the last check I got from my company, I don't even think I worked a full week either. It was like $2,500.
Wow.
For that week, and it's like, and it's also like I was getting welder incentive. So if you're a welder, if you pass the MIG welding test, they gave you $150 a day in per diem. So
and for those that don't know what a per diem is, it's just like it's money for you to fuck around with.
So it's technically a living stipend.
Yeah.
So it's not taxed, right? So usually
it's meant for food, living expenses, it's like your everyday stuff because you're in the middle of nowhere working.
Yeah. So there's you know, like welders they'll go to a job for the money, but they'll stay for the per diem. And when the per diem dries up, that's usually when they leave.
Okay.
So like if you were just a regular stick welder, you'd be making like $110 a day per diem. If you were a TIG welder, you'd be making like $140.
And that's on top of your hourly, right?
Yeah. So that's like the hourly wage plus that. And then this is the cool thing about the union. That's just my like take home. They also paid for my insurance, my 401k, my retirement, like all these things that I didn't see. So like as a union welder, you make $70, $80 an hour. But you know, but that money gets divvied up to different stuff, right?
Right, 401k, retirement, Social Security, all that bullshit.
Exactly, right? So, you know, your take home, my take home was like $34. That's the prevailing wage for the union in Austin, is like $34 an hour, which is great. It's good money. That's a good hourly wage. So
and this is for a journeyman or an apprentice?
So this is for a journeyman. So apprentices, you make first year apprentice makes about half of that.
Okay.
Second year they bump it up, and by the time you're like a fifth year, you're making about 75% of what a journeyman makes.
So you're getting close to that.
Like, yeah.
You're not in a bad place 5 years into it.
No, 5 years into it, you're making on that check, you're probably making about $1,500 a week, right?
Well, I mean, yeah. Plus you're getting, I guess, a stipend for the day too.
Yeah. So even like, but if you're local, you get what's called what is it? An incentive.
Okay.
So, but that incentive is paid once a month, and it's usually like $3,000. They'll give you $3,000 once a month for you know, doing the same shit.
And you just got to make it work.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things. And that's just, you know, and they don't even really need to give you that. But so I mean, it's I mean,
and are you working 12 months out of the year, or does this kind of give you the ability of doing, you know, 8 months and then taking 4 months off?
Yeah, so what I'm doing now is like when you're an apprentice, you can't quit a job unless it's like for harassment or something like that, when there's a good cause, right?
Right.
Because you'll get in trouble because they're like, hey, man, we're trying to teach you this trade and you just want to fucking quit. Like, what's that all about? When you're a journeyman, you can quit whenever you want. It's no big deal. So what I do is I'll work for a company for X amount of months. I'll save up, quit, go do comedy for as long as I can. And every time I do that, it's a little bit longer and longer and longer because I keep getting better at comedy and I keep getting more connections and stuff like that, right?
What's your home base for comedy?
Austin.
Yeah.
So
you're in the right place.
Yeah. So like that's what I did. You know, so I drug up from my job, quit my job. I had a savings, so just living off that, making a little bit of money here and there, doing whatever. And when that dries up, I'll just go back to welding, right? And I can call 6 people on my phone right now and go back to work tomorrow. Like,
okay.
And that's the cool thing about the trades too, is like there's no interview process. I'm not competing with 1,000 other people for this one job. I'm competing with 40 people for a job that they need 100 guys for.
So you're all hired anyways.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, I can make a call tomorrow and be like, hey man, I need to come back to work. And they're like, cool. Can you be here tomorrow? But yep. Cool.
And the way like kind of like middle America is growing at such a rapid rate right now.
Yeah.
Where like every state is going through like this boom, where it used to be the coasts were the big places because they're all doing all the construction. But now it's like Wyoming, Texas, Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, anywhere you can think of, is just like they got this huge boom and they need people.
It's one of these things of like, the pandemic really showed how shitty LA and New York is.
Which is so unfortunate. They both used to be such cool
The best
places to be.
And dude, I used to live in LA when I was a kid. I was a child actor. I lived in North Hollywood. I was like, oh, this place is dope, right? This is cool. But as you get older, politics move in, property tax moves up, people get greedy, and they're like, fuck you. You know what I mean? They stop caring about people, right? And so yeah, that's the one thing the pandemic did, was show that, you know, LA and New York are like, oh yeah, these places kind of suck. Like, we're overcrowded. There's homeless people everywhere, which is fine. But also, it's the most fucking expensive place ever.
Why is it fine, though? Like, we can so easily take care of the homelessness
we're not going
issue
to,
in
but
the
we're not going to.
entire country.
Yeah, we're not going to, though.
And it wouldn't even be a drop in the bucket that is the yearly spending of this country.
They said something like $20 billion, and they could fix homelessness in America.
It's like 1/18th or 1/100th of what we've already sent to Ukraine.
Yeah,
in
it's
funding
insane.
Would have just taken care of homelessness, period, forever. We're
Yeah.
done.
And
it's an end of the story.
Yeah, and I don't like pretend to know anything about that, right?
Neither do I. But I also understand corruption's got to be there, because if we've been fighting fucking homelessness since I could remember, and that number keeps increasing.
Right. It seems really after Vietnam, a lot of shit. That's when everything started happening in America. Like, all the bad stuff kind of really started catching up with us. But it's also one of those things that's like, people are going to be homeless. Some people are just going to be homeless.
I get it, but like, we should be actively lowering that number. You
of
know
course,
what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
but
mental health should be a priority for fixing this. Like, I think a lot of the people don't want to be homeless and would rather be contributing members of society.
But there's always going to be that. There's always going to be somebody who's homeless, right?
Yeah, that I understand.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. We could probably fix it with, you know, a check or two, right? Or a program put in place. But until they figure out a way to make money on it, they're not going to do it.
Well, that's the other thing that pisses me off so much, is because so much money is wasted on it on a yearly basis.
Yeah.
Private donors and government grants and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
Where's this money going?
Yeah.
How many administrators need to be in a nonprofit for it to actually work?
Yeah. So yeah, and I mean, and the pandemic really showed people that these places that aren't the best to live, right? I mean, dude, LA's amazing. It's 75 degrees most of the year. The ocean's right there.
The mountains.
You
got everything. Like,
it's
California is an oasis.
Dude, 2 hours away, you can be in Big Bear. Like, you're fine. Yeah. It's great. It's beautiful. It's fucking awesome. But it sucks because it's so expensive to live there. And same thing with New York. Like, this room in New York would cost $4,000 a month.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Like, dude, if you plumbed in a sink and a toilet, it's $5,000 a month. You know what I mean? And it's insane because those places are like the epicenter of culture and art and things like that, right? Music, movies, whatever. But
at least they were.
Yeah,
for
they
a
were.
long time.
But then people are like, "Oh, hey, I don't need to be a nurse here, or I don't need to be a accountant here. This place kind of sucks." What's Jackson Hole, Wyoming like? Oh, it's beautiful. Oh, it's got a bunch of cool seasons. Oh, I can go snowboard. Oh, I can go mountain bike and go on trails. Yeah, let me go to, how much is it? Oh, it's a fraction of the price. Yeah, let me go to Jackson Hole.
Oh, and my kids can go outside and play without me worried about some pedophile, some drug addict,
or them like stepping.
Add whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, or them stepping on a fucking needle or whatever.
Yeah.
Or they can go play in the river that's not polluted with all this garbage and shit, right? Oh, let's go to Texas where there's a billion tiny little towns that are awesome, right? That are super cool, family friendly. The schools are good. The crime rate's low. All this shit. They're like, oh, why the fuck am I paying all this money to live in this place that's so fucking cool, but I don't need it to be? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I come from New Mexico where it is like abject fucking poverty, but it's beautiful and it's super cheap to live. And there's a bunch of little towns that are awesome, right? Like, both me and my girlfriend are from New Mexico, and the towns we're from are not great. But,
okay.
But like, I grew up in a place called Stanley, New Mexico, population 108. We had a post office.
And that's it.
And now they don't. The post office shut down. So now it's just a church and a rodeo arena, and that's fucking it. Shit. But in 30 minutes, I can go snowboard. I can go buy an elk tag for $100 and go hunt a fucking elk if I want to. I can go to the mountains. I can go to the river. I can go wherever I want because New Mexico is really cool like that. Where like if you go north, you're in the mountains. If you go south, you're in the hills or in the plains, and and people are starting to realize that. And there's 2 million people in the whole fucking state. There's more people in this town than there are in my entire home state, which is insane.
Dallas is way over 2 million at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the population of the DFW Metroplex is like 4 million or some crazy shit.
Which is still like a minuscule number if you think about how big DFW is.
Oh, it's giant, yeah. I got into town. I still drove 45 minutes to get here. It's insane. Yeah. But like, America is such a big country, and there's so many cool little towns that were 10 years ago dying because nobody wanted to live there. And now people are moving into these little towns, and they're like, oh, this place is cool. Let me open up a business here. How much is a business license in this state? Oh, it's $1,000 or whatever. Cool. Let me open that little winery that I've always wanted to do. Or,
right.
Or, oh, hey, let me start a contracting business here or whatever. And I think it's great. Like if we took the populations of LA and New York and kind of just spread them around America and all these little towns, right? Those towns would be a lot better. You know what I mean? And it'd be a lot more diverse, and there'd be a lot less people in this fucking weird tribalism we have of like, oh, it's us against you because you don't talk like we do or whatever, right?
Still don't understand that shit. Aren't we all just Americans at the end of the day?
Yeah, that's a crazy thing. It is weird when someone's like, hey, what's your background, right? And I don't want to say like, oh, I'm fucking Scots, Irish, and Hispanic. Like I want to say I'm American, right? Yeah. You ask somebody from France, where you like, what are you? Like, oh, I'm French. Right.
That's one of the things. Is like ask any Armenian person; they're not going to go down a Rolodex of like,
yeah,
oh, my grandma was I'm Armenian. That's it. It kind of ends. Russians are the same way. Right. Egyptians are the same way. It's only us that, for some reason, want to. I get it, maintaining and enjoying each other's cultures.
Sure,
and
yeah.
That diversity is part of the the foundation of the country, but it should be like kind of going next to it, not be the predominant.
Like that shit made sense 150 years ago when everybody here was an immigrant, and they're like, oh, what's your background? Like, oh, I'm Irish. Oh, I'm Polish. Oh, I'm Italian. I'm whatever, right?
You'd be like 19th generation American at this point.
Yeah.
Fucking let it go.
Yeah, but at this point, you're like, yeah, I'm American. I was fucking born here. I'm an American.
It's the same thing as like when, and I don't want to like, sound racist in any way, but like, why are black people not just Americans? Why are they African American? You can't just be Americans.
You know what's funny? There's a
like, how bad would it be for all of us just to be like, we're Americans?
I was hanging out with.
I mean, I actually genuinely get to say I'm Armenian American because I wasn't born in this country.
Yeah, it's great.
I adopted this country as my own.
So that's awesome.
But my kids don't get to say that. They're Americans.
You know what's crazy? I feel like a lot more immigrants are more patriotic than like natural born Americans. You know what I mean?
That may stem from coming from like a shitty environment. Not that where I came from was shitty, but like it's a lot better now, but it wasn't anywhere near what it is in this country, and the sheer amount of opportunity that's offered to you here. Right. Like you can just go to school, get a degree, live a nice life, take your 2 holidays a year, your kids go to a decent school. The whole gambit exists here.
Right.
And then a lot of other places, it doesn't.
No, yeah. Most, like, there's, like, 217 countries in the world or something like that.
Yeah, it's something
So it's like 217 countries in the world. Like, a fraction of those are, like a lot of countries in Africa still are, like, war-torn. Same thing with, like, South America. There's revolutions and coups and all this crazy shit going on. And then people here in America, they're like, this place sucks. This place is so fucking this. And I'm like, dude, try to go to fucking, like, Venezuela.
And say that without getting your ass kicked.
Yeah, dude. Try to go to Venezuela or go to Armenia 80 years ago when things were really fucking bad, when they were having a genocide. And people were literally getting fucking, like, people were coming in people's houses and just murdering you, right?
Or like taking anything and everything you had and all this. And, like, Yeah, like talk to Cubans that have made it to this country.
Yeah,
They'll
dude.
tell you what like fucking communism actually is.
Yeah, dude.
And,
Yeah,
you know,
talk to Cubans whenever, in the Fidel reign, whenever they were given 6 eggs a week.
right.
And they're like, hey, you can't go buy eggs. We're gonna give you 6 eggs. We're gonna give you 6 eggs and a loaf of bread, and you're gonna fucking like it.
Talk to a bunch of Russians that come from the Soviet era where they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, you starved, bro. There was a lot of times where there was no food.
Right. Or like talk to like, this is a long time ago, but like, dude, talk to like Irish during the potato famine.
Yeah.
Or like, and there's still like, dude, like Northern Ireland, like Belfast and all these places, that are still like the north of Ireland are still like, dude, fuck the English, right? Fuck these, like, why are they still, why is the dude over there making rules from over here, right?
Right.
Like, Northern Ireland is still going through the shit that we went through in the 1700s of like, hey, why is a dude across the pond making fucking regulations for us here when he's not doing the shit we're doing here, right? I mean, and it kind of, I think of myself as pretty patriotic, and it makes me really like upset, like when people are like, this place sucks. I'm like, dude, go try to live somewhere else. Go try to live in Canada. Canada, dude, even you go to the north, you go 1,000 miles north, and you go to Canada. It is a completely different, like, it's insane.
You don't have the same allotted freedoms that you do here.
Dude, America is one of the, you go to some parts of America, this is some of the only places in the world where in the same day I can smoke a joint, marry a man, buy an AK-47, and then buy a piece of land.
In that order.
In that order.
Yeah.
Right?
Why the fuck not?
Why the fuck not? While taking the Lord's name in vain and saying fuck the president. And no one's going to come to my house and do shit about it.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Not a goddamn thing.
Nothing.
Like, if there's a hill worth dying on, it's the First Amendment.
Exactly.
Of all the fucking things allotted in a country, that one simple fucking thing changes everything.
Dude, the fact that
changes everything.
The fact that in this country I can worship who I want, say what I want, and no one can say shit to me unless I'm not, unless I'm invoking violence or threatening somebody. I can fucking say whatever I want.
Which makes sense too, right? Like if you're openly saying kill group X,
right,
and this is how you should kill group X, yeah, I got a problem with you, bro, because you're actually going against what freedom really is.
Exactly. Like my dad's Baptist, right? I mean, he's a Christian dude. He went on a path to become a preacher for a while, and then that didn't work out or whatever. But like really religious dude, right? And my stepmom's the same way.
Right.
And we were at the ranch this weekend, and they were talking about somebody, and they were like, yeah, so-and-so, but he was an atheist. I was like, there's nothing wrong with that. They're like, yeah, there is. And I'm like, no, there's fucking not. There's a reason we live in this country. Like, it's, and this is such a fucking, like, virtue signaling bullshit to say, but, like, it sucks that we fucking categorize people as that still. Like, oh, that's Jeff. He's an atheist. Great dude, but he's like, so what, dude? He's a fucking... Dude, some of the best dudes I've ever met are atheists. Some of the worst people I've ever met are Christians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that sentiment.
Yeah.
Just because you say you believe in God and you're a good Christian doesn't make you a good person.
No, not at all.
I mean... It's the same thing as saying, like, all doctors are good people. No, they're fucking not. There's some horrible-ass doctors.
I say this about vets, too, it's nice to thank every vet for his service, but not every vet is like a good person just because you served in the military. Like, I was in the military police, so like,
you saw some dirty shit.
I mean, not really. I mean, I didn't really do a whole lot, but like the stories we told and all the stuff that we've heard and some of the things we've seen, I'm like, if everybody in the military was such a good fucking person, we wouldn't have to have military police officers.
Yeah.
Right. The amount of sexual assault in the military is through the fucking roof. It is crazy. The fact that like I've had to take SAPR training, which is sexual assault and rape prevention training, every 6 months in the military for the last 6 years is insane to me. And I'm like, this is fucking nuts, right? And it happens. It's super common, like, dude, like drugs, drinking, adultery, all these. So like when you're in the military, you have to follow what's called the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and it's its own laws and regulations and guidelines that military personnel have to follow, right? So like in the military, you can get in trouble for cheating on your spouse.
Oh shit, I didn't know that.
So so like adultery, right? It's like, it's conduct unbecoming. You know what I mean? And I've heard stories about people like getting caught cheating on their spouse in deployment or whatever. And I mean, it's one of those things of of like, I mean, I don't even know how we got on the subject, but it is one of those things where like, when someone's like, thank you for your service, and like, oh, guys, give it up for the vets, but give it up for the good vets. Give it for the dudes who are like good people, right? It's, I don't know, it's a whole fucking deal.
I think the way kind of like allow us as civilians to look at it is we don't know what's going on inside the kitchen.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's,
you know what I mean? Like, so for us to say thank you for your service, we want to genuinely believe that the men and women that serve this country in one of the most selfless ways are the good in our society, are the ones that we should be praising.
Right.
But that isn't to say that all of them are great. It's a perspective only someone that served can say.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be allowed for the rest of us to pass that judgment.
Exactly.
Because, and I heard, and it pissed me off so much, and this was like rhetoric going around during the pandemic where people were like, fuck the military and all they do is kill and this, and I was like, have you lost your fucking minds?
Yeah.
Have you guys gone completely stupid in this time frame? Because like, okay, cool, let's get rid of our military. How safe are we 2 days later? We're not. We're dead, bro, because everybody else is still fucking hating on us.
It is one of those things that are like, it is, we're the kid in the schoolyard that's got the biggest stick right now. We spend more money on our military than the next 26 countries combined.
And there's a reason for that.
I used to have a joke that I tried to tell about military spending and how military spending so it's funny to me because like a lot of military spending is use it or lose it, right? So if you have a department, right?
Right.
Let's say you have a department on a base. Let's say you're allotted $1 million every year for your budget. You have to, and let's say 1 year you spend $900,000.
The coming year they're going to give you $900,000.
Yeah, the next year they're going to give you $900,000. So a lot of military spending is frivolous. Like I know dudes that have like they'll have like a bunch of like plate carriers or a bunch of like kit or whatever that the military was like, they're like, hey, we need to buy new plate carriers next year. Just we're not going to use these ones. Just take them, right? Because they're like, we need to spend by the end of the fiscal year. We need to spend all the budget money, right? So at the end of the year, and it's like the beginning and the end of the year, right? The beginning of the year, it's like, oh, cool. This is when all of our spending is, all this stuff. And then at the end of the year, like, what's left? And if there's not much left, you're kind of fucked. But if there is, like, I know a lot of mechanics in the military that like, they're higher ups, like their LPOs or their officers or whatever will come to them and be like, hey, I need you to make a list of all the tools we need. And they're like, okay. And they'll make a really detailed list of all the tools that need to be replaced. And they'll give it to that person. And that person will check it out and be like, okay, we're not quite there yet. So we'll get 3 of everything or 5 of everything. And the next year they bring it in. And dudes, I know a lot of dudes that have like a lot of really good tools because they just they're like, hey, we don't need this tool anymore. We got a new one. Take this old one home. Right. And so I used to have a joke about military spending of like, it cost $2 billion to make an aircraft carrier. There are 20 aircraft carriers right now in the world. We own 10 of them.
Shit.
A lot of countries don't even have an aircraft carrier.
So Great Britain's probably got like what, 2 or 3 of them? Because I know their Navy's massive.
So like
Turkey's probably got a couple of them.
So it's like Great Britain, Russia, Brazil, and like a couple other countries have.
Which Brazil kind of like comes out of left field.
Yeah, right. Well, Brazil's, I mean, it's a really big country too, but I remember like looking up like stuff for this joke, and I remember seeing Brazil, and it's been a few years, so don't quote me on this, but like at the time when I wrote this joke, there was 20 aircraft carriers in circulation in the world. We owned 10 of them, and those are just our aircraft carriers. That's not our frigates, our destroyers, our submarines, and all this other stuff, right?
And if you don't know what an aircraft carrier is, it's literally an aircraft carrier.
Yeah,
like it has multiple
it's
F-22s and F-15s and
it's
helicopters, and there's like it's like a city. People live on that fucker for a while, right?
It's a mobile runway you can launch jets from at any point in the ocean at any time, right? So like a Patriot missile costs like over $100,000
each one.
I know a dude that shot 90 into a fucking ISIS training camp and only killed like 13 dudes.
Jesus.
Or maybe he shot 13 and killed 90 dudes. Anyway,
Still.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. That's still $130,000, right? 100,000. Yeah.
So they're $100,000 each.
Yeah, so 100
times 13 is 1.3 million.
Yeah, 1.3 million, right?
So 1.3 million if you go down that math.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy shit.
I don't know why the fuck I had to shower in a group in boot camp.
Yeah.
They can't afford fucking curtains. They can't afford stalls. Sell one Patriot missile, and you can afford stalls for boot camp. We're fine. You know what I mean?
It's just not in that budget. It's in the other budget.
It's in the other budget. But I always thought that was really funny. Because when I was in boot camp, we had a shower in a group, right? There's a room probably 3 times this size, and that was our shower.
It's like county lockup.
Yeah, it's got county, right? And there's one column, but it's got like 8 heads around it, so like 8 dudes can shower at a time. We had to split it up between like 2 sections of our boot camp division. And I was like 2 weeks in, and I was like, hey, why are we doing this? Why are we all in a fucking? Why do I have to see Garcia's giant dick every fucking day?
Shout out Garcia.
Like, dude had a hog on him. But I always thought that was really interesting and fun. I was like, military spending's so funny to me because we allocate it to the craziest shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then they come up with these reports sometimes. They're like, you guys spent $4 million on toilet seats? What the fuck?
It's funny because like that comes from like price gouging, right? So like when the military puts out a contract for anything, they give it to the person that has like, obviously the lowest bidder.
Right, yeah.
But the Air Force might be like, hey, we need 1,000 toilet seats, and a contractor might be like, hey, we'll sell them to you for $6,000 each toilet seat, and that might be the lowest bid that came in, and they'll be like, all right, cool, we're going with this guy, So now a toilet seat that costs $50 or $20 or whatever from Home Depot or some supply store is getting marked up substantially because this contracting company is making money off of the military.
That, and then also there's like this whole, I'm sure there's a ton of money that needs to be spent on getting these guys clearances and getting them to be able to come on and install this shit on the bases. And, you can't just use FedEx to deliver it. You got to go through properly bonded delivery.
Right.
I know it sounds like an exorbitant amount of money to spend, and yes, there is probably a good 30 or 40% of it that didn't need to be wasted.
Yeah.
But it's not the same thing as going to Home Depot and getting a toilet seat because of all of the shit that goes into it.
But it still shouldn't cost $6,000. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. It's like it is one of those things of like just greed. They know they have it. They know they're gonna spend it. They know the government's check's clear, so they're gonna go after it anyway, right? It's like, have you ever seen War Dogs?
Yeah.
War Dogs is great. Like when they like bid for that ammo supply, and they're like, yeah, we're going with you guys. You guys came in under budget by $20 million, and they're like, fuck, that's insane, right? And they, it's just, I don't know, man. It's one of those things of like, I'll never understand it. We'll probably never be able to change it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It
seems like so many people have their hand in that honey pot.
Right.
I don't want to stick my hand in there.
Yeah. There's a really good quote about, I don't know why I thought about this, but about like World War III. We're talking about kind of like nuclear shit, you know what I mean? There's a really good quote that says, I don't know what weapons we're going to use in World War III, but I know World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
I believe that was Einstein.
He might have been.
I believe that was Einstein's quote, or was it no, not Oppenheimer. It was Einstein's quote. I'm almost positive he said that, and it makes a lot of sense,
right?
Because either we get to a point where we don't blow ourselves into oblivion, or we do again.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people think that it's just going to be a nuke fight, but really, it's like, we have so many things in place. We have so many countermeasures, and it's almost like...
Well, who's going to nuke us? Russia? They're not.
They might.
They won't.
Yeah.
Honest to God, they won't. And it's like, I know a lot of people don't want to agree with this because they have been fed a narrative that doesn't make any sense. But again, I'll keep saying the same thing, and I'll say it again. Putin's been in power for 20-some-odd years.
Yeah.
Who the fuck has he invited this whole time? Nobody.
The thing about nuclear war is it's like a Mexican standoff, dude, because it's not instant. The second somebody presses a button in Russia,
everybody else is going to press their button.
Everyone's going to be like, fuck it, bink, and then everybody just fucking goes, right?
Which makes me also kind of feel like just like our country, one person can't.
Yeah.
I don't think any country has a policy that allows one person to do it. And I think Russia's included in this list, Iran, North Korea, anywhere that you might think is a psychopath at the helm is not.
Yeah.
The psychopath at the helm doesn't have full and unilateral control.
Right.
At some point, I promise you, if for some reason, let's say Putin goes nuts tomorrow and goes like, fuck it, blow them all up, I don't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah.
There's going to be enough people that are going like, no, bitch, I had a wife and kids, bro. I'm not letting you fucking kill the entire world because you've lost your shit.
There's a really cool story out of Russia that, or maybe it was out of the United States, somebody, but there was something on the radar that said like it looked like it was an imminent nuclear attack, and somebody gave this kid an order. That's another thing. Like the dudes that are manning this shit, the dudes that are manning Predator drones, like they're not like adult. I mean, they're adults, but they're not like 56-year-old men.
They're not fully formed, wise people that
Yeah,
have
a
gone
lot of
through
them-
an experience.
Yeah, a lot of them are fucking 19-year-old kids, right, that have been trained on this, or 20-year-old kids or whatever, right? And it's, you know, and so somebody was like, hey, I need, you know, he's like, hey, press the button. And he was like, just wait. And he like waited, and they realized that it was like a blip on the radar, and it was just like, it wasn't real. And we've come to nuclear war like pretty close a few times, and it just hasn't happened. And you're right. I don't know if it'll ever happen.
Something instinctually says that no one really wants the end of, because think of it this way. Let's just say Russia's quick to throw the damn bomb, and we don't have a chance to retaliate, right? But what does the world look like after nuclear fallout? It doesn't look like a good place, because it's not what Hiroshima and Nagasaki were. These things are thousands of times stronger than they used to be.
Yeah, it's a way more powerful bomb than we had. There's like the Moab.
Yeah, like we've gotten way better at this.
Yeah, like the Moab, if I'm not mistaken, was stronger than both Fat Man and Little Boy, I think, combined, and that wasn't even a nuclear weapon. It was just, you know, but yeah, I don't know, man. But I do like that quote. I'm a big quote guy. I do like that quote from, I guess, Einstein of, you know, he's like, you know,
I
don't know when, I don't know what we're going to fight World War III with, but I know World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
And I feel like that might not be the way we think of it. We're projecting like a nuclear war or something. I think we've unlocked a Pandora's box so much fucking worse than we could have imagined.
Oh, yeah.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah, AI
We're so stupid with the way we're handling this thing globally.
You know,
because we're on a race. Everybody's in a race to be the first to fucking get there. You're like, really? Is that the right way of going about this?
Yeah, I'm seeing all this AI shit pop up on like my feeds and stuff like that, and I'm like, man, when does it fucking end? Like, I can go on ChatGPT and it can write a whole novel for me if I asked it to.
That's the fundamentally scary part for me, is that everybody's adopting it because the letters AI. My fucking washing machine at home has the letters AI on it.
Right.
Samsung, powered by AI. Nobody really wants to put any thought into what it means. And if we just universally adopt it, like, you know how like everything started having Wi-Fi at some point?
Right.
And you're like, okay, why does my toaster have Wi-Fi again? But like, you don't think about it more than that, like, passing thought of setting up a toaster. And you're like, okay, whatever. I don't need the Wi-Fi feature.
Yeah.
Why are we doing that with AI? It's exponential levels of scary, way above that. Like, I remember it was a couple of years ago where they were showing a large language model AI, and it was in some symposium in India, and this AI was only trained on English. And then they asked it a question in Hindi, and it fucked it up the first time, but then they asked another question, and it started answering in Hindi. And they were like, but we've never shown it that language. We don't understand how it understands it and is answering. And it freaked everybody the fuck out. But it was like a little article in the newspaper that nobody paid attention to.
One of the freakiest things I ever heard of AI was like they created two AI computers, and they made them talk to each other. And it was, at first it was very like, it was like, hello, who are you? I'm this. What's going on? And then they started talking to each other in their own language.
Which was freaking them out.
They created their own language, and they immediately were like, fuck, and just unplugged it. And they were like, okay, all right, we don't do that again. No, right? Nobody does that. All right, cool. We're just gonna not do that ever again. And it's one of those things where like you don't know what the fuck you're doing, right? Like when Oppenheimer was building the nuclear bomb in Los Alamos, I've seen the building that he's fucking built that bomb in.
No shit.
Right? Like I've worked at Los Alamos, and that's just a fucking weird town altogether. But they call it the Hill.
Yeah.
A lot of people will say like, "Oh, where do you work?" Like, "Oh, I work on the Hill." Like, I work in Los Alamos. But that's a very strange place to work. And when he built it, yeah, it was like, oh fuck, what did we just do? We just built the fucking bomb of all bombs. Now it's like we tested one, and I think a couple years later, by the time we got to like 1960, we had set off like almost 1,000 nuclear bombs on Earth, like just like testing them and, you know, oh, make them bigger and bigger and bigger. Oh, drop them from different heights and make them explode on impact or make them explode above or whatever, right? And it's like, I don't know what the fuck we're doing. We're too fucking smart for our own good.
Go check it out. Okay, we're gonna have a conversation, and I've got all these things in my head of like, I wonder if I'm gonna ask this or that.
Yeah.
It never works out that way. So this is why, like, I don't do any research beforehand.
Right.
I don't want to be prepared for this because it becomes so much more of a fun and interesting conversation.
When you kind of just let it go.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I didn't know you were ex-military. I didn't know anything about your dad. And it's like all this interesting and cool stuff. And
yeah,
we kind of like had sort of a theme today was, you know, talking about just like,
I feel like the theme of this podcast has been talk about everything you're not supposed to talk about.
But isn't that the whole point of all of this? Is like, aren't we supposed to be having the freedom to talk about anything and everything we want to talk about?
I think that's how we evolve as people, you know, talking about those things that we're not supposed to talk about.
Yeah.
Right? Talk about politics and religion and, you know, norms and, you know, kind of taboos of society, right? Like it is, like in my opinion, it is very taboo to speak ill of the military because we have such a military industrial complex deeply embedded in us as people and as Americans, really. And then, you know, and a lot of people don't like that when you hear somebody saying like, yeah, not everybody in the military is a fucking good dude, right? Not every Christian's a good fucking person.
And I can speak on the Christian part, and I cannot speak on the military part because, like I said, I feel like as a civilian, it's not our job to criticize the military.
Sure.
It is the job of other military people to criticize the military.
Right.
It's where you come from, and you're allowed to speak ill of it because you firsthand saw some of the things that you wish that didn't exist. Like, why do I have to go through, you know, sex and rape kind of training every 6 months? Or why do I got to go through a bullshit budget of buying toilet seats that doesn't make any sense? Like, all of that has to be coming from the inside out.
Right.
For us as civilians to understand it. And sometimes it's okay for us to make comments about it, but we shouldn't be the ones to criticize or unilaterally be like, oh, fuck the military and blah, blah, blah. And fuck you. All right? Well, how about you shut the fuck up? Remember that you haven't done shit other than complain on Twitter your entire life.
Right.
And the fact that you get to complain on Twitter freely is because of the damn military.
Yeah, the fact that the government doesn't shut down Twitter in this country and just allows us to have an open forum to talk about whatever we want is great. But also, it's also one of those things of like, man, it really divides us a lot too. And I mean, I think it pisses me off too, like the division of people and politics and things like that, because I'm not like a political guy. I don't think any of them give a fuck about us anymore, right? You know, I mean, 100 years ago, politicians were definitely trying to, you know, be better and do stuff like, the New Deal and all these things that, like that FDR did, or the stuff that like Lincoln did, all the stuff that like actually benefited people. But now we have this system of like these, I saw a really cool video on TikTok, and this person posed a question like, if you can make a law right now, what would it be? And a guy was like, I would like that my representatives, like a senator or a congressman, has to make the median amount of income from their state or their district, and that's their salary for Congress.
Okay.
Right, and you can only serve a certain amount of terms and things like that, right? Like you can only be a congressman for 4 years, and and stuff. Which that brings a lot of other stuff into like now we're constantly getting new congressmen and constantly stuff like that, and now we're kind of starting from scratch every year and every 4 years and things like that, like we do with the president. And and then like the president doesn't even really have that much fucking power anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the thing people kind of don't want to recognize is like president, but we have 3 branches of our government for a reason, the checks and balances that are and meant to always exist. I think the problem for me right now is that I grew up in a time where whoever got elected, you might not be happy with the person getting elected, but that was your
guy.
You were unhappy with that person, not the 50 some odd percentage of the country that voted for that person. And if you not to defend Donald Trump or Joe Biden or any of these politicians, but like if you liked Trump and you didn't like Biden, that shouldn't have been your identity ever. You're like, oh, whatever, dude. I'm a Republican. You're a Democrat. That's it. Once every 4 years, we figure out who we like. And I've always asked this question, and like sometimes I get an answer that makes sense, but most of the time it doesn't. I'm like, how much has a president really affected your life?
And that's exactly the thing is like, in my opinion, the president is somebody, and this is why I don't like Joe Biden, is because a president is a representation of your country.
Yes.
And that's his main job. That's your guy. That's your fucking representative to all the other nations.
He's your face.
He's the face of the country, right? And like, presidents like FDR. FDR was a great president. I mean, he did a lot of good stuff for the country. He got us through World War II. He was a very strong man, and he was very prideful and things like that. And he was a good leader, right? And we were happy that he was the face of our country.
Yes.
Like, when Joe Biden can't come up with a cognitive sentence, you're like, fuck, dude, you're representing everybody in the United States. You're not representing Democrats or Republicans. You're representing Americans. Same thing with Donald Trump. I'm like, hey, dude, when you call people fat cows and fucking all this shit, you make us look fucking bad.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and the people that are directly causing like shit in my life is Congress and all the lawmakers and things like that, right? The president doesn't make laws, right? He can sign,
executive orders here and there, but again, those can be vetoed at any time. Even if executive orders are not unilateral. If they're fucking weird and crazy, they're like, hang on, man.
I will say this, FDR's Executive Order 9066 was fucking crazy. It's a Japanese internment camps. That was a bad one. FDR did fuck up a couple times, but
as did all of them. That's the other thing is like, it makes me so angry when people are like, well, Obama was the best. I'm like, no. Obama was good in certain respects.
Sure.
He was fucking horrible in other respects.
He's also drone striking weddings. You know what I mean?
And I was like, if you really want to look at the amount of death on somebody's hands, Trump killed the least amount of fucking people while he was in office.
Yeah.
Now, that may have been just the circumstance of his presidency, where we were already in wars all over the place anyways, or it could have been the pandemic, or it could have just been the way Trump is. But here's the other thing. Like, why don't you look at some of the other leaders of other nations and the way that they speak and are heard? And I know, like, Tucker is getting a ton of criticism for his Putin interview for not hitting with the hard questions and all this. But I was like, you guys kind of missed the entire fucking point where he asked a few questions and a dude was able to speak clearly, succinctly, and intelligently for hours.
Right.
Like, how much of what he talked about historically was accurate or inaccurate? Well, fuck, you don't know anyways in this country because you don't give a shit about anybody else's history, do you?
The thing about Vladimir Putin that I will say is, I mean, he's a strong leader, right? He's a dude that's like, he's a pretty much a dictator. I mean, he's been in power for 20 years, which is insane.
But is that such a bad thing for certain people in this world? Because if you've got the Russian people who are fucking tough as nails as it comes, because they've gone through a lot of shit in their history,
the thing that makes
maybe they don't need a Biden.
The thing that makes Putin dangerous is he has absolute power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And
I agree with you.
Right.
But the same could be said for somebody who has been a career politician like Biden.
Exactly.
That guy's corrupt as fuck too. Like he's been since he was against gay marriage forever and a day.
Yeah.
He was against black people forever and a day. But like everybody wants to forget what he said in the 70s and the 80s for some stupid reason. You're like, bro, if this guy can just flip on a dime all the time with what he thinks is real and what he thinks is not real, and I don't know how much of it is him at this point and is his handlers. That's a scarier thought to me. I'd rather have someone that sits in front of me like a Trump and tells me the way it is in their words and the way they see the world.
Yeah.
Versus the cue cards that are given to Joe, and he's just got to go up there and be like, I guess Dylan Mulvaney's great, and I'm all for.
I'm like, dude, if I lined up 6 people right now, could you point out Dylan Mulvaney? Could you do that?
No.
Probably not, right?
He'd probably have a hard time fucking picking out his wife.
Exactly, right?
And I genuinely feel bad for Joe Biden because I'm like, at this point, you should have been just chilling in a beach somewhere, like not doing shit.
Yeah,
bro.
dude,
Like,
you got 10 years maybe. Just fucking chill for the next decade. You're fine.
Why are we torturing this poor man and pretending like he is the savior? Like, that's what the fucking Democrats kill me about. Like, I'm not a Republican, nor am I a Democrat, but like, both sides seem to be pissing me off equally right now by picking these two guys. Like fucking nobody, 330 plus million Americans, and there's nobody that has a bet. I'd rather have Tucker Carlson be running for president, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
He's smart. He's been around for 30 plus years in the public eye.
Right.
He seems to have a good head on his shoulders. Yeah, he might say some crazy shit from once in a while, but all of us do.
Yeah.
All of us do. Like, seriously.
Oh, dude, my thing about a leader is like, I liked Bush because, I mean, he's like the dude you can have a beer with. But also, what a lot of people don't remember about Bush was after 9/11, he was there. He was there at ground zero, and people might be like, that's a political stunt, things like that. But it didn't matter. Like, my thing was, he was like, hey, listen, there's this really cool video of him whenever he's at ground zero and he's speaking out. He's speaking with a microphone or a bullhorn, and I don't even know if he's speaking with a bullhorn, but he's like, someone's like, we can't hear you. He goes, but I can hear you, right? Like, I can hear you guys. And that's, dude, I don't give a fuck. Like, dude, the president is a made up office anyway. He doesn't really have a lot of power. He's not a fucking king. He's not a ruler. I just want somebody that we can be proud of. Someone that's going to just, dude, they're all going to bullshit us. Just bullshit us better than what the fuck is going on right now. Right?
Honestly, I want somebody that drives fear into the rest of the fucking world. That's who I want. And it may sound counterintuitive to freedom and our Constitution. No, it's exactly what would maintain our freedom and Constitution. I want somebody that's going to be like, you want to fuck with me? Let's go, motherfucker.
Yeah. Dude, I want a president that I can't take in a bar fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, I want the guy to be like, instead of live, love, pray on his fucking wall, it better be fuck around and find out.
Dude, like, Mattis has got a great quote, and we can probably end it after this, but like...
Sounds like a plan. General
Mattis has a great quote, and it says, be polite, be courteous, but have a plan to kill everybody you meet. And like, that's, in my opinion, that is a perfect description of what a president should be. He should be someone who is articulate, someone who's knowledgeable, but a bad motherfucker. You know what I mean?
I don't know whose quote this is, but Joe Rogan says it all the time. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
That's Sun Tzu. That's The Art of War.
Is it from?
I think it's from The Art of War.
It may very well be. I don't want to misquote it, but I've heard Rogan say it a million times, and I genuinely agree with it. I think that that's what a leader should be, a warrior in a garden.
Yeah, like, dude, Kennedy was a fucking war hero. Kennedy saved people's life in World War II.
Like, the president I didn't get was McCain. I wanted him to be president so goddamn bad.
McCain was a bad motherfucker, dude.
Like, he's a POW.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys where you're like, I fucking want you to lead because I'm so terrified of the shit that you've seen.
Any motherfucker that can spend that many years in the Hanoi Hilton is like, yeah, got my fucking vote. You know what I mean? And he was a maverick too.
And like, it shows the type of man that he was when he passed away. Bush and Obama spoke at his funeral.
Yeah.
And they spoke so highly of him. And my favorite thing, and we can end it on this, is like, when McCain is being interviewed and they tell and some lady asks him in a town hall like, well, Obama's a Muslim and he's this and he's like hang on, no, you guys, he's my opponent, but he is a good man. He is a great human being.
Right.
He is an American. Like, I love the fact that he was willing to defend his opponent.
Yeah.
Because it was really deep rooted in defending all Americans.
Exactly. I mean,
and we don't have that anymore. All they do is fucking bullshit each other nowadays. And it's like,
that's it.
You're a bitch. You're ugly wife. You're and you're like, motherfucker, stop.
Yeah. It's turned into reality TV is what it is.
We look like a bunch of morons to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And they're just sitting there going like, why should we take you seriously when all you do is badmouth each other on a personal level in elections? Like, again, I don't want to go of us being ruled by a Putin type of a person.
Sure.
Because I love the freedoms allotted in our democracy. But we shouldn't have someone that's so far disconnected with the American people that we got Trump and Biden as our candidates. Neither one of them represents this country, to be completely honest.
Dude, like the president of Ukraine is
Zelensky?
Yeah.
The comedian?
But it's like, here's what I like about him, right? Like, he's a comedian, and yeah, he's not like a politician. I don't know anything about his politics, but like,
I don't either, yeah.
The fact that when all that shit happened in Ukraine, this motherfucker's throwing on Kevlar.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not leaving, I'm here.
Yeah,
he's like, I'm staying in Kiev until the end. He's like, I'm not leaving my people.
Yeah, he's like, these are like, and that's, I mean, that shows a lot about the content of a man's character. He's like, listen, he's like, I know this is like a joke to you guys, but he's like, these are my people. I'm not fucking leaving. I'm not going anywhere. Like, that's what we need in America. But then again, I dropped out of junior college, dude. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about here.
I've prefaced this 25 episodes into this podcast, and I'll say it for the rest of my life. I'm a moron. I'm not going to pretend to be a person that understands how deeply complicated politics are, or the military, or a lot of things. Like, we're surface level. I'm just chilling here looking at things.
Right.
Bird's eye perspective. I'm not really zooming in on what's actually happening. And if I was, then I would be really one track and kind of like severely tunnel vision into this one area, because you have to become an expert at anything.
Right.
You can't be a theoretical physicist on the weekend, right?
Yeah.
Same thing goes with being a politician or a career military person.
Yeah.
Same goes for our journalists.
Right.
They need to be laser honed on the truth.
Yeah.
And I don't think they are. So this is why I do this podcast, is because comedians are still laser honed on the truth.
Yeah.
And it's like the last line of defense of bullshit.
Yeah, it's like, if you want to know what's really going on in the world, really listen to comics.
Oh yeah, dude. Like, they'll tell you exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Exactly what's going on.
And I mean, you might just have to look a little bit deeper than what they're talking about, but if you really kind of like peel back the layers, you're like, oh, this is what's going on in our country.
It's like behind every poop and dick joke, there's a deeper meaning. You just got to be willing to look for it.
Behind every Tinder joke, you're really talking about how, like,
society's going to hell right now.
How fucked up our society is, and how hard it is to find somebody and things like that.
And every time you make fun of a blue-haired individual, you're also talking about the torment that is a lot of people's reality as of today.
Right.
It's not okay for so many people to be so deeply torn about their identity that they don't even want to identify as male or female. I think that's not a good thing for anyone.
I think what's going on in our country right now is we just, and this is going to be kind of sound crazy, but I think we just have it too good.
Yeah, you're right.
We don't have. We're a very safe, fat country, and I mean, I'm right there with you guys. But like, I mean, it's like Tyler Durden says in Fight Club, like, we don't have any great war, we don't have any great depression. Our great war is a spiritual war, and our great depression is our lives. And and if you really think about that quote, you're like, damn, that's true. Like, like my generation grew up with Iraq and Afghanistan and things like that, but like, it's not here, right? It's over there, right? Like, my dad's generation, he grew up, kind of the same deal. Like, like he, the generation before him they're all Vietnam vets, and the shit was happening here, riots, the Kent shooting, the shooting on the Kent campus. I mean, the fucking, the free love movement, all these things. There's stuff happening in America that was like real shit. I mean, civil rights, women's suffrage, all of these things were happening, and we actually had something that was real to fight about. And now,
civil rights movement.
Yeah.
People were genuinely being oppressed. Same thing goes with like the old school gay community. They were fighting for an actual cause that mattered to them. All they were asking for is give us the ability to be miserable or happy the same way you guys are.
Right.
That's all we ask of you.
Yeah.
Is like give us the same ability to be happy or miserable in our own relationships. And I'm like, and I won't even deny this. When I was younger, I was stupid and didn't understand what that meant.
Right.
And I was against it at a certain point in college. And then someone said something that was so profound that will stick with me forever. They're like, don't set a precedent for something that will bite you in the ass in the future.
Exactly.
Because if you take it away from someone, that gives a reason for someone else to come along and take it away from you.
Right.
And I don't want to live in that world.
Dude, the movie, you ever see Milk? About Harvey Milk?
Harvey Milk. I haven't seen the film. I've heard that it's amazing.
It's really good. I mean, it's really, like, I'm just a big movie guy in general, and I watched it one time, and I was like, and I watched it a few times since then, but the first time I watched it, I was like, that movie really changed my perspective from being, like, a dumb kid from a small town where, like, we had one gay guy at our high school.
Right.
And then, it showed, like, just like what these dudes were going through in like the Castro district in San Francisco in the 70s and 60s and stuff like that, of like they were getting the shit kicked out of them, just for being gay. And you're like, well, that sucks. You can't change that. You can't change who you are, right? Like imagine if I got in a fight every time I held my girlfriend's hand going down the street or gave her a kiss or something like that, right? And it's like,
and there's places in the world where you're not allowed to do that still.
Exactly.
Heterosexual people living in certain countries cannot hold hands in public, cannot kiss in public because it goes against some sort of religious doctrine.
Right. And I mean, it's like, dude, old queens were just the fucking toughest shit, dude. Like,
have you ever talked to a couple of those, like, a gay dude that's in like their late 50s, early 60s? You're like, you're a tough motherfucker. Because like you literally had to fight for your life,
right,
just to fucking love the person you love.
Yeah.
If that was a choice type of a thing, most people would have given up on that choice.
Yeah, there's like 19-year-olds now on Grindr, and they're like, oh, yeah, this is great. And it's like, oh, whatever. But like, dude, if you wanted to be gay in the 80s or the 70s, you're going to have to get in a couple fights. You have to fight some dudes to suck some dick. You know what I mean? Those dudes earn those dick suckings.
Yeah, and again, like, at some point, we all need to fucking understand that none of any of that was really targeted towards destroying the American family and all that. No, it was just like people that didn't fit into society that said, hey, man,
right,
I deserve the same opportunity and rights as you do. And like a lot of people don't understand this, like spousal privilege was something that wasn't allotted to the homosexual community. And I remember during like El Nino in LA where it was just these horrible rainstorms and people were just like, I need to get home to, like my family. And if you didn't have a wife, what are you fucking talking about? You sit here and work, bro. You don't have the same rights as or you don't get shared health insurance because you work at a really good company that offers great health benefits.
Right.
That wasn't allotted to gay people because they didn't have the same laws protecting them as the heterosexual. And that was their fucking fight. Like, people forget that they were fighting just for equal rights.
Yeah. I mean, they weren't just fighting just for, oh, I just want to get married. It's like, no, like, hey, my boyfriend is in the hospital. He's sick or what's going on. Like, I want to go see him. They're like, are you family? They're like, yeah, we've been together for 10 years. And they're like, yeah, unless you're married or you're his brother or family, you're not going back there. And it's like, dude, imagine loving somebody, right? I think gays can love. I'm pretty progressive. So. No, but dude, imagine loving somebody and then it's like, your relationship is less than to somebody else or something like that. And that's a terrible world to live in, right? And I think
it's an ass backwards way to live.
And
no pun intended.
Yeah, dude. I think a lot of people now, like, I mean, being gay is just so common, or being trans or whatever is so common nowadays that people are like, oh, cool, yeah, whatever, right? And I feel like most people are like, oh yeah, well, I don't give a shit, right? But they forget that not very long ago in our history, a lot of people gave a shit, and a lot of people didn't want to, and a lot of people would go incite violence on these people to stop them. You know what I mean?
And if you listen to like sensible transgender people, like Blair White comes to mind.
Oh, I love Blair.
Her whole thing is like, this is who I am, I really don't want to impose this upon anybody or their children
Yeah.
or any. Just leave me the fuck alone.
Dude.
This is what makes me happy. And you sit there going like, I'm on board with you. Like, it makes a lot of sense that your life is a better life that you are living
Right.
as a woman versus a biological male. And you're saying that women should have their own sports and transgender shouldn't be allowed in there.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fucking sense to me.
It's like, dude, to take this thing full circle, like, if you go back to, like, Eddie Izzard, like,
Yeah.
dude, he walked on stage. He didn't have one fucking, like, oh, I'm actually there. He's like, no, this is just what I do. This is who I am. I'm not going to say you should do this. Or I'm not even asking you to say this is right. I'm just asking you just to fucking leave me alone about it. Right? Like Blair White, like, she's just like, yeah, I don't. She's like, I'm. This is me, but I'm not like shoving it down other people's throats. Like, just like, let me. This is how I like to live. Makes me happy. This is America. Let me be fucking happy. That's the name of this. That's the name of this episode. This is America.
This is America, and I think this is a perfect place to end it for right now because I know you've got stuff going on and you've had a hell of a long day. Maverick, thank you for doing this so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy.
Anytime you're in town and you want to come by and do a pod, you're welcome to. This was fun. We didn't get to any of the shit that has to do with you being a stand-up comic, to be completely honest.
Oh yeah, forget about comedians.
Yeah, like we didn't even talk about you going on stage, writing jokes. We processed none of that stuff. Yeah. I don't think we've scratched the surface of you, your family, and all that stuff. Yeah. So like, you have an open invite anytime you're in town, dude.
I'm always through.
I really appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thank you.